Yes, we'll call it to order at 9:03 and I'll ask if there's any non-arranged participation. Seeing none, we will proceed to work session number 2. As with the past work session, we can go in any direction. Any topic is valid. All we're needing to talk about anything that we think is important. Whether it relates to the budget or not, right, we can talk about anything. But if there's something that relates to guidance to city staff, or there's a goal we have that needs to be reflected in the budget document that Dustin and the team will put together, and that's also. I don't remember exactly where we left off last time. You were going through the goals and objectives, and as we went down through that, we had just kind of, as we crossed anything, we just talked about it. But I'm not sure we actually went through it completely.
We did not. I think we got to page 3 of 12.
Do you want Justin to keep going from there? Is that a fair place to start, or does anybody have a topic they want to touch on first? Again, you don't have to raise your hand, although Ray, I want you to start practice raising your hand. Just for Karen's sake, at the fire board meeting.
I asked her how she was on Robert's Rules of
Oh,
Order.
that sounds like a story I must hear.
But she's a fine, upstanding person. I'm just too rude.
Excuse me. Joe.
I wanted to talk a little bit about public safety service costs on page 2 of the packet. We are, I don't feel like we're in the same position we were 10-ish years ago, where we were running large surpluses, right? We had all the neighborhoods that had been built in the 2000s were all in line. They were all paying taxes. You know, we had a lot of money. That's how we ended up with a huge reserve and stuff. And the fire department and the police department costs were large, but manageable under the budget and stuff. But with the fire department, with the substations being built in the townships, we went from a situation where we had the one station, so we were paying more proportionately, both in runs and when you look at all the other things like property values in townships. But there was an advantage to us, right? We were cooperating with the other communities. They were getting a deal because they weren't having to fund the full cost of freight, you know, and then they decided they wanted to have substations. So now we essentially have 3 fire departments that are working together, right? The only thing that we're sharing is a fire chief. That's it. You know, the rest of the staff essentially, you know, now we're staffed up so as if we had 3 fire departments instead of having 1 fire department that's serving 3 communities. And the problem with that is we're the smallest community and we're paying essentially an equal share with the other fire departments. So once they brought on board, and by the way, when they brought on board those fire stations that they built, they did them on a discount, right? They said, we got to build the fire station with the goal of to get firefighters in the townships. That was the only goal. The goal wasn't like what we did, where we had a whole needs analysis that went through, and that's why our station ended up costing 2 to 3 times what the townships did. So yet again, we are the ones, the city is the ones who are pitching in and paying for the needed infrastructure in the community. When I say community, I mean Dexter City, Dexter Township, Webster Township, you know, the school district, all this stuff. The city is the ones that are stepping up. And the problem is we're, like I said, we're essentially funding our own fire station, but we're funding the expensive fire station and we have the least property value. So our citizens are paying a higher millage to fund that fire station than the other ones are. Same thing goes with the police department. You know, we went through the analysis a long time ago Webster Township has just as much need for the or the police or the sheriff officers that we pay for as everybody else does. Yet they only pay for 2 heads. We pay for 3.5, Dexter pays for 3. And the whole rationale is always, well, then we get 24/7 coverage, right? We get 24/7 coverage all the way across, plus we get a sergeant, all this stuff. It's like, yeah, we do. We get all those things. But the problem is the city is paying for the most of it. And we are getting to the point with these costs where we are not going to be able to afford to be the donor, good guys in the relationships here. We got to figure out a way to get the townships to come to the table. And frankly, from a fire station standpoint, I think we ought to look into doing it by ourselves. If we were our own fire department in the city without the townships, think about all the miles they put on those vehicles. They talk about how fast they wear out. They don't wear out running around the city. We got 2-point-something square miles. Every single time we go to the township, we're averaging, at least 12, 15 miles round trip. Every time we go out in the city, we're averaging 1.5 miles? I mean, you're literally talking 10% of the mileage and maintenance that we've been putting on those really expensive equipment. We are paying for the township to burn up and use that stuff. And they are proportionately paying less. Their citizens are. And we have it all the time where people say, oh yeah, move to the townships. I only pay 2/3 as much on the taxes. They only get 2/3 as much as the services. They don't have opportunity to get water and sewer, etc. But they get the same exact fire. They get the same exact police. The fire stations are out there. How long before they say we're going to set up a substation for the sheriff and we want a sheriff out in the townships, and we'll be in the same situation? We have to figure out a way, because public safety is going to be, I think on here it says it's 30% of our budget, but I think when you look at it in terms of the general fund, I think it's bigger. I think it's closer to 60 or 70% of the budget.
Not a general fund. No, I mean, it's closer to 25 to 30% of.
Well, how much is general fund?
Getting close to, without the fire station this year, it'd be about 4 million.
Okay, and how much do we pay to the DAFT?
So DAFT this year is going to be 1.3.
Okay, and how much do we do in public safety?
650.
Okay, so we're over 2 million. It's half of the budget. So I mean, it's like the federal government looking and saying, we're going to cut costs, but we're not going to touch defense, Social Security, or Medicare. Well, you just cut out 80% of the budget. How are you going to cut half the budget if you're cutting out 80% of it and saying you're not going to touch that? It's the same thing. We're going to run into the same problem. We're going to be helping out the townships with the fire and the police and helping them maintain their coverage for their residents. And we're going to have to tell our residents, yeah, we're going to have to cut back on things like parks. We're going to have to cut back on things that you want and that you get by being in the city all the time. And the schools are on that too, right? We do a lot of things as a city. I mean, think about, we pay for roads. They don't pay for roads in the township. They pay the county the same as we do to maintain township roads. Sometimes they vote their own thing or they got their own, but how much do the roads get used by the parents of the people at the schools? I mean, just look at the infrastructure. Look at the PSU that's out at the high school. I don't think we should pay for the PSU out at the high school anymore. I think we should let the school district know we're not doing that anymore. We're just not doing it. We're dropping that part of the contract. We're dropping that deputy. And I think we ought to let the schools know they need to get on the water system. They need to not be on the wells anymore. They need to start contributing to the system the same way that they're using it, because they're using those wells to offset their costs and pushing costs back onto the city users. I just think we need to get out of that mindset that we're going to be the good guys and we're going to foot the bill on these type of things. And it starts really with public safety. I mean, and like I said, I think we have to look at how do we do our own fire department, and we should let the DFD know that that's what we're looking at. Because what are they going to do? If we say we're out, we're going to do our own fire department. We're going to buy an engine and we're going to hire 6 guys. And we're just going to have them at our station and they're going to cover the city. What's the township gonna do? They're gonna run it out of one of their two stations. They're gonna go back and forth between there. They're gonna have to up their rates, right? Because they're gonna have to cover all that overhead cost themselves. And if we're gonna have the same overhead costs, we might as well have it on our own instead of doing it along with them. There is no advantage that I can tell right now, except for splitting the cost of the fire chief of being in the DFD. It's extremely expensive for us, and it's gonna kill us. In the long term, I think it's gonna kill us.
Can I ask one question real quick? ESU?
Police Service Unit.
Thank you.
Just a couple of thoughts, not necessarily in any particular order. Joe, you mentioned getting the schools on the water system.
Mhm.
I believe they are.
They're on the water, so they've got wells, or a couple of them are also for irrigation, but yeah, they're all on the wells.
Right, but what we did was we gave them exemption. It was like 20 years ago to allow them to keep the wells that they have for landscaping on their property.
Yeah, and I think we have something even with people, I don't know if anybody is right now currently, yeah, there's a couple people that have wells. And my understanding is that once those wells fail, they have to jump onto our system, so I think, I don't know, that's, you talked 20 years ago before me.
Right.
So I don't know if they could, test it, but I mean, that probably was the same thing, once their wells failed, they'll have to jump on.
And I think there's only a handful, that are more on the periphery of the boundaries.
But what I'm talking about is the schools, we specifically signed off on something that said, you guys can stay in your wells to water your fields and whatnot. And I know we're constrained on water and stuff like that, but, essentially the enterprise systems are in business for themselves, right? And we're cutting off what they're selling. And that means everybody else pays more for that same product, or it would contribute more, potentially more, so.
So the second thought is, for better or worse, our residents pay the public safety millage to the county.
Mhm.
And through that millage, the sheriff's office is offering, discounted service through the cost of a PSU.
Yep.
Communities that provide their own police services receive those millage dollars back in full. And then third thought, for better or worse, the cost of the PSU for the schools, we pay 50%, I believe right now. We pay 50%. And during the summer months, we get that PSU in full. But I mean, that's 3 months out of 12.
Right.
But
And so we did have, and you sent me the
Mhm.
minutes from that meeting when I
Mhm.
asked you about that
Mhm.
figure. It was either 0.7 or I think it was 0.8. Originally, the schools were paying 0.8.
we're paying 80%, correct?
Because essentially for the school months that they have off,
Mhm.
we were getting 20%. We were getting what we were paying for. It was no big deal,
Mhm.
right? They were paying what they were using, but now it's 50-50. And frankly, that school sheriff designated does all of his training and all of his vacation in summertime. So we really don't get that much of a benefit of having it in the summertime. That's been the long-term effect. That's what we found out going forward. And maybe that's changed. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe whoever assigned, takes time off in the summer or whatever. But I agree with you 100%. We do get benefit of them in the summertime if they're here. So, yeah.
But also we are the only direct contributor to that PSU.
Correct.
You're
The
correct,
townships
the
don't.
townships do not directly contribute to that PSU. And then, sorry, one last thought. Also, as part of the Western Washtenaw collaboration for sheriff services, we pay for 3 PSUs, 3.5 with the schools. Dexter Township pays for 3 PSUs and Webster Township pays for 2.
Correct. Yep, I agree.
How does it work for fire runs? Are they responsible for, say they go out to the school, are we responsible for part of that?
Any runs to the schools are shared runs, so they don't count towards towards solely the city's total.
I would don't have to come up with extra money to pay fire department for runs.
Correct.
I thought we were supposed to be billing the schools for the fire run.
We were for a long time, but then, before I stepped in as city manager, there was an agreement that the DAFD, would not bill us anymore for runs to the schools. They would just be, go into the lumped shared runs.
Yeah, there's four categories of runs, just to be clear. There's the city of Dexter,
Mhm.
there's Webster Township, there's Dexter Township, and then there's what's called shared runs, which could be a mutual aid run to another community. We have to go to Chelsea or Scioto or Pinckney or wherever we want to go. The schools fall under that. I believe there might even be like when they do a public education thing, that becomes a shared run because it's to the benefit of the public, like if they, come look at the trucks or whatever.
Direct walk-ups to the station are supposed to be shared runs.
Yeah.
So I'm going back to that public or the police service unit. Dexter, Webster, and City of Dexter contribute to that
Mhm.
for the school.
No.
No.
So
You pay for.
Oh, so that-
$1,800 of a person.
Okay,
Okay, and when we
So
say
say-
the police service unit is $1,800 roughly,
okay, and the three,
and we pay for 3.5 of those people.
so maybe this is a naive question. Why isn't that cost for a unit in a school district not shared by all parties in the school district?
I think that's what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing a point.
When they built the high school, the city basically said, you guys need to fund a police unit to be at the high school.
Mhm.
And at the time, they said, you gotta pay 80% of the cost of that PSU. And it was under the city's contract with the county. So we essentially paid for 3.2. Then the schools had some financial difficulty and renegotiated the contract where we were gonna pay for half. So that's why we pay 3.5 now in the school.
For half.
They pay us back, I assume?
So that they actually pay for the one PSU and we pay the schools.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep.
Okay,
So in essence, we have 8.5 PSUs between the three townships. And I think after a long time ago, they said something like, if you get over 8, that's when they assign a sergeant for the area.
Mhm.
Becomes like a substation type of a thing. So, I mean, if we contracted on our own and said, we just want 4 so that we're gonna cover the city, we're gonna do that, we wouldn't qualify for that higher level of service.
Just wanted to put some numbers to what Joe was saying. Looked up on Washington County state equalized value reports that gives you the values for state equalized value and taxable value for our communities. So it looks like the Dexter Township, we'll go with taxable value. I think it's the simplest one to go. Dexter Township is $435 million. Webster Township, $422 million. City of Dexter is $227 million. So when you look at the combined values, like state equalized value for these three communities, we only represent about 19.2%. Yet our bill for the fire services roughly historically 30% and predicted to be at 30% value, right? So essentially, if I can call it that way, we are providing roughly 11% subsidy to other townships in this relationship, which seems to be not necessarily the best deal for us, considering that our population is roughly 2,000 people less than other townships and sizably smaller when it comes to footage and the roads traveled. I think I would like to second Joe's argument here. I don't think this relationship necessarily benefits us at this point. Perhaps it did in the past, but right now it's definitely doesn't make sense for us. Looking up roughly very quickly, it seems that city of Milan has a taxable value similar to ours and population size similar to ours, and it looks like they are able to have their own fire department for under 1.2 million a year budget. So it is possible, at least there is an example nearby, not saying that I have any know in the quality or how they do their business, just quick search. But it seems that you can have a standalone fire department for a community of similar size that is somewhat less than the current budget and will be significantly less than the projected budget for this service.
So let me ramble a little bit on all of that. This problem has been out there for a while. It started 30 or so years ago when, or more, 40 years ago, when the agreement was put together and the only method of determining percentage of contribution was runs.
Mhm.
Everybody understands that percentage is based upon last year's run percentage, right? Everybody understands that. Ray and I just had our fire board meeting on Thursday evening, and there is sentiment, at least in Dexter Township, to have a discussion about this.
Mhm.
They also feel like the formula needs to change. They are paying perhaps the highest percentage, just based upon the runs, at least in the last year. There's a couple problems with separating just cold turkey. The AFD has liabilities for pension and other post-employment benefits, same as the city has. Neither one of those liabilities, or neither one of those benefits is in anywhere near shape as good as the city. Okay, I think the pension is probably the best one. I think they're 81% funded, maybe. I have to think about the last actuarial. So that's not too bad, but the other post-employment one is, 20%.
I don't think that.
21. I think Doug, you asked the question to Doug or somebody last meeting here at the meeting. And so there's, if we were to break away, there's going to be a calculation of what we would owe towards that liability. The other thing is that you don't take anything with you. So the AFD has $1.8 million in the bank. Because when we pay there, if we happen to manage that budget under budget, the dollars stay there, they don't return to the community. Okay, and we've been doing a good job of saving there as best we can, because we have big expenses. I mean, when they buy a vehicle, when we buy a vehicle, I guess we say, those things cost a lot of money. Okay, the ambulance that we just got was $290,000 outfitted. We also don't get to keep any of the equipment. So there's a startup cost. So, I encouraged Karen Sickengut is our chair for the current year. She's a Dexter Township trustee. She was the former Dexter Township supervisor for a portion of a year and a half. She's very interested in having the conversation. She wanted to have it at the fire board meeting. And I don't think it belongs at the fire board meeting. It's not an issue with fire board discussions. But that's really not under their jurisdiction. This is between the three communities. And one of the action items that came out of the last meeting was to pick two people, or three if we wanted, but a couple people to participate in that conversation. All the communities agreed to go back to their respective boards and get members assigned. And I spoke up and said that Justin should be one of them. Our city manager should be one of them. Now, if we want to have two council members, that'd be fine. Karen would like to see at least one person from the fire board just so there's some continuity of relationship. Um, 16 years ago, 2008 or 9, I tried to go there. We spent 4 or 5 years, 4 years, 5 years talking about this. At one time, we even had Chelsea in the room, talking about even more regionalized fire department. And certain styles stayed in the discussion too, about whether or not there should be even bigger. I mean, there's multiple ways to go here. We could get bigger, we're talking about shrinking. Or we could get bigger. I don't know if that solves anything or not. If you ask some of the Webster Township people, they think we should have a dedicated public safety village. They think our problem is that they think they've got the solution to it because they ask their residents to pay a dedicated public safety village rather than us trying to fund it through the general fund, which is historically how it's always been paid for. The other thing that comes up is whether instead of being under an interlocal agreement where we're established under Public Act 7, the idea of creating a new authority that could set its own tax levy or millage rate, and you take the fire department right out from under, there's less control, it would be but we would organize it within the 3 communities, let's say, and everybody would pay the same millage rate, which based on taxable value would correct the problem. So I'll stop talking, but those are a lot of things, but I would like today to give some thought towards who should participate in that conversation. Because I would like to, Ray and I would like to come back in April and be able to say, hey, we're ready to do that and hear the people. The second thing, just so I don't forget, Justin, and this is not exactly related to that, but we need to work on a lease. A lease for leasing our building we're building to the DAFD.
Well,
And what we volunteered to do at the meeting is that you would draft the first copy. You would take the lead on drafting whatever you think is the right lease, whether that's a model. Everybody at the meeting agreed that it'd be great if they were in similar fashion to what the other townships have, but it doesn't have to be exact because there's unique things in each community.
well, I remember talking about this 6 months ago or more, that one of the goals at DAFD was to have if not a very similar lease, but have like a lease template for all 3 communities and their stations.
I would say you should look at the other 2 and similar, but does not have to be same.
Mhm.
If you know, what I mean, if there's things that we want to put in the lease because we think we need them, I'd say go for it.
Well, and like when I think about this, I think, I mean, obviously our station is bigger. Does it make sense to do like a per square foot cost that can then also be applied to the township's facilities and their leases?
If you've got a creative idea that you think benefits, that is fairer and benefits us in any way, throw it out there. My point at the meeting on Thursday was we should start that discussion now because it isn't going to happen in 30 days. And there's going to be pushback. There'll be pushback just naturally. That's just how stuff works. Jordan, go ahead.
On the lease specifically, I wouldn't necessarily go by square footage, but I would go by and suggest that we go by facilities provided. Because again, we're going to be providing a laundry list of capabilities of the facility, whereas the other.
What do you mean by that? What do you think we're providing them?
Well, I don't know, like the thing that we're talking about for rappelling off the top of the roof. Do
Very
the
good
other
point.
stations do that? I mean, I don't know, maybe they do. Do the other station have, columns where they can hang up the fire hoses? Do the other ones have 6 rooms for firefighters? Do the other ones have offices for the fire marshal, for the chief, for the assistant chief, or whoever it is. I mean, we provide a lot of stuff, you know, we have a training room, right? Where they're gonna have weight training and all that kind of
And
activities.
those stations have that too.
Okay, but, and so
Yeah,
maybe
I'm with
that
you.
one is on a per square fitted basis or on a equipment provided.
I hear what you said. I didn't understand what you meant by that.
Just on the other items, the unfunded liabilities, when Lima Township left, I don't recall any discussion about them covering any of the unfunded liabilities. So if that's the case, and I don't know it is, maybe you remember differently. If they left without that, there's at least a precedent that that's not the way that the DFE does it.
They made a donation.
Okay.
I believe it's how Jim Cedar worked it out. Is that they made some kind of donation, I thought.
Okay, well, and the thing is, on those unfunded liabilities, they are going to explode because we just tripled the number of firefighters in the last 5 years for the fire department. So it's gonna get worse before it gets better, and we're better off being out sooner rather than later and dealing with whatever it is. I mean, I don't understand, lawyers are gonna say, I'm sure that we owe whatever we owe. The agreement says when you leave, just like you said, you don't get to take any of the equipment with it. We don't get to take any of the balance that we, you know, essentially have contributed. We don't get to do any of that stuff, but somehow we get to leave with the liabilities. That doesn't make any sense to me.
That's true.
If we want to leave with the liabilities, cool, give us back our money, give us back our equipment, we're good. We'll pay whatever it is, we'll pay it off and we'll move on with life. And to be clear, I don't want to do our own fire station. I don't want to have to pay for our own PSUs. I want to do it with the other communities. I just want it to be fair, that's all.
Yeah.
And I don't see any other way to do that or to go to the table and say, look, this isn't working for us. We want to work with you, but we can't continue to do it this way. We did have that study that was done way back when we were first talking about going with SIO, I want to say it's probably 10, 12 years ago. We should find that study and give it to the other communities so they have a copy of it again. They probably still have it, but, and I'd be 100% on board with area-wide millage or an authority. I would love to see fire station get out from underneath the city. I would like it to be not, it'd be a don't care for us except for renting out the fire station. So,
Bless your feet.
Sorry, thank you.
Yes.
On unfunded liabilities, I don't know if any of them are still alive at this point, I would have to look. But we have been paying for DAFD retirees all along. Because there were some people that were retired when we split. We used to be responsible for reporting and stuff like that, and we charged the DAFD for their workers' costs. And when we split them out back in like 2002, I want to say 2003, we kept some of them in our plan because it was too difficult to split them out. So just as an FYI, I don't know if any of them are still alive, to be honest with you, I would have to look. But we have been subsidizing their retirement in that method
Well,
for years.
so look, I think what I'm supportive of this whole conversation. I wish I was able to move it along better 12 years ago or 16 years ago. I think we need to get all of these points written down. We need to get a document that can present. Joe, I mean, you did a great job of explaining, you know, where we are. I thought you did it in a fair way. I think your points are valid, but we need to get our storyboard together. Because the meetings, we're gonna set the meeting up. I mean, we talked about it at the fire department board meeting, and all communities seem at least willing. Now, I don't know what you do, you know, Webster Township's in the catbird seat right now. They're in the catbird seat from the perspective of, if we just talk fire, you know, the last couple of years anyway, the trending has been for them to have the least number of runs. They also have their own, you know, their own public safety village. Now, it's kind of a scary thing. I mean, a couple times ago, I think they only passed by like 5 votes or something. Okay, now this last time, I think it was re-upped by much more than that, but you know, the department is on it's fragile in a lot of ways. the way it's set up. I mean, if one of them didn't vote for a public safety village, they wouldn't be able to pay their share. And that would affect all of us. I don't know now whether that means they close the station there or, and go back to how it was when there wasn't a station in the community or not. But it is fragile, so that there are things that can certainly be improved. I think this is a healthy conversation. What was one other thought about the liabilities are not getting necessarily worse with the hiring because nobody is in the pension plan anymore.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we did similar to when the city got out, we got them to agree that there's no defined benefit. So the union agreement has two sides, if you will, people that are in the defined benefit plan. I think there's of the 15 firefighters, I think 6 of them are in the defined benefit. And the same goes with the healthcare. Those same 6 are the ones that have the obligation of the department for healthcare beyond employment there.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so that it's limited by people.
Sure.
Liability is still there because those firefighters are still there, obviously. Yep.
As I say, I just pulled up MERS and yes, we do have firefighters now.
Okay, well, if you could itemize what that is, some of that stuff, I've been saying a long time to Webster and the Dexter Township folks have changed over the motion. I mean, I've been on the fire board of it since 2015. Ray, you have some history of being on it before with me. We served together. The 2 people in Dexter Township, Karen and Lonnie Scott, who's the new supervisor.
Oh, is he the supervisor?
He's the new supervisor. Yeah.
About quiet.
Yeah, pretty quiet guy. Nice guy. They've only both been on the board, a year or year and a half, 2 years maybe for Karen. But they fully acknowledge that the fire department is their biggest cost that they pay for. It's the biggest thing that they do. And Webster Township has John Scharf, John Westman. John Westman's been on the board a long time. He was there. He's been on there a long time.
Yeah, he was on there when I was on there.
They essentially have 3 of their trustees on the board.
I think.
John Scharf is the area large number. Keep talking.
Joe, I wanted to add to your point about making our own fire department, but it might not necessarily be the best solution, but I think it's only healthy to develop each course of action appropriately and actually put thought and effort into it so that we don't come to the other townships to have a conversation without showing, and for ourselves as well, knowing that there's more than one course of action, that we prepare for each one of them so that we both know what to do. And they also know that we are serious about exercising other options if necessary. So yes, might not necessarily be the best or the easiest solution, but still probably should develop each and every one of them in order to really have a good understanding of the landscape that we're operating in.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this last time, but I think it would likely only make financial sense for us to go out on our own with fire if we could do some sort of public safety department where it's police and fire as the same people.
There's a lot of, when we looked at all this stuff before, there's pluses and minuses to all these things, right? I mean, obviously, fire station, we'd have big startup costs. We'd have to get at least an engine and probably an ambulance now, the way things are going. We'd have to hire people. We'd have to get a fire chief. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It is a big hurdle. But the thing is I think when we get past that hurdle, I think our long-term costs are going to end up being less than what they would that we're doing now. We did actually talk about public safety, firefighters / cops. The comment that I remember that sticks out in my head most was cops don't want to fight fires. Firefighters don't want to arrest people or carry a gun. You know, and I agree with you, you really would need to multitask you because, you know, instead of having, 12 people to do the job, you could potentially get away with 6 or 8 and, double up on stuff. And I mean, we really don't have that much need for police services. I mean, we do need police services, but it's not like, it's not like we're in Ipsy Township that needs 40 deputies for the sheriff or whatever. So, but, so yeah, I can see, but again, same thing. There's pluses and minuses to each one of them. And like I said, I think if we wanted 24/7 coverage, we'd have to have at least 4 deputies, if not 4.5. We would lose out on a sergeant and, it would cost us more than what we're paying right now. I completely understand all that.
Well, I think you need closer to like 7 or 8 deputies if you wanted more than one person on a shift.
Right, no, I'm saying just one person per 24/7.
Yeah.
Well, to Pablo's point, if we're gonna go down the road of having the talks, we might as well do a thorough discussion of all the options.
Well, and I think that study that we did way back when had some of those all laid out. And there was 3 things though. There's runs, taxable value. What was the other thing?
Population.
Population, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you're talking about the Ken Harvey's.
Yeah, the MSU guy.
Yeah, the suggestion that was made back in 2008 or 9 was that the formula shouldn't just be response-based, it should be what you're protecting. And the 2 things that were supported in the argument of what you're protecting are you're protecting people and you're protecting property. And the taxable value or SUV, whatever taxable value is, how I think we looked at it. And then the number of people. And then we talked, okay, should it be a third, or should it be 30%, 30%, 40%? We got into all sorts of, everybody had an opinion of which one and how it should be.
Yeah.
But the idea is that there were 3 factors that made more sense than just one. And I think that everybody, truthfully, who's ever been part of the fire department or been part of any of our township or city boards, village, otherwise, all agree that the agreement we have is antiquated. Okay, there's also been talk of having a smoothing effect. So that instead of your percentage going from, 28 one year, from 28% to 36, and having a big hit and having to figure it out, that there's like a 5-year average or something. So there's all sorts of ideas that I'm just throwing out there so you don't feel like you're gonna hear them for the first time. People have proposed all sorts of stuff. We've never quite been able to get to the point of rewriting the agreement. And I personally thought 17 years ago that we would have been better as if we got bigger. Like I liked the idea of having SIO part of our conversation. I haven't thought too much about that in recent times with the way their board behaves and acts. But again, my thought was that if we could get SIO back involved, which they were originally involved, and we could get the formula changed, the city's percentage would drop way down from population and taxable value perspective. Our percentage would go way down in the overall. And to your point, we'd be sharing much more, of the command structure and the leadership of that. You'd be spreading the chief out even over more. Although there's probably an argument that you need more assistant chiefs or something, but to your point.
Yeah, and if Dexter Township and Webster Township would be open to doing it again, I mean, you remember this, the one of the biggest stupid issues we had to get over when we were talking with SIO was what we're gonna name the department. I mean, literally that came down to one of the things that pretty much derailed the entire discussion. As soon as that came up and that came to an impasse, people started backing up. It was really bizarre. But
The other thing that people couldn't agree on is representation.
Exactly. Yes.
As soon as we had SIO at the table, being the bigger group, they wanted more people on the.
Well, yeah, they have half the population, half the
Yeah,
taxable
yeah.
value, you know, I mean.
So there's all sorts of angles to this, is all I'm saying.
And my point is just, there's a million ways that we can get to this. The one we're at right now is gonna work for us long term. I mean, we're just gonna, you know, it's like we're wearing a life vest that's not keeping us, our heads over water. Sooner or later, we're gonna start going under.
Can I ask sort of a leading question following up on the same thing? It's sort of outside the bounds of just public safety. If I think about our master plan update and the housing and the planning outside our boundaries, and both planning commission and council taking in more but welcoming view is the word I'll use for expanding boundaries. How do you, or do you see that having an impact on any discussion with?
Michelle, I don't know. Like I said, I only mentioned SILE to provide more of a comprehensive view of what was going on 17 years ago.
Oh, I understand that.
I don't, I had the grand vision that Western Washtenaw County could have one fire department in 2008. And so I invited Linden Township, Chelsea, Sharon, I mean, everywhere going west, Chelsea, you know, and everybody was good enough to come to the meeting because I asked them to come to a meeting. But within like 2 meetings or 3 meetings, Chelsea basically said, hey, you know, we're happy with our own little system.
Right.
It works for us.
Why should we change?
And everybody that was, the people that were left at the table were SILE, Webster Township, Dexter Township, and the village at
I
the
get
time.
it.
You know, I think we should start with the partners that we have, and we should tell them where we're at. And like I said, Joe did a great job of laying out the problem and the issues. You know, it's easy in a conversation like that to get defensive, or to you know, we got to make sure that we aren't offensive. Is maybe the way I want to say it, because they will quickly get defensive. If you know, if we suggest that when you're saying something's not fair, people can sometimes take that the wrong way. So, you know, so we have to put it out there in a way that explains things. And like Maria, I wasn't aware of what we're paying for. If you could quantify that or provide some history on that.
I can at least try to figure out who the people are. There's 2 names in there I recognize for sure. That were firefighters when I first came on board. And then there's a bunch of other names I don't recognize, which could be former employees. I just do not.
Yeah, okay.
But I'll do that. I gotta know.
What I did say at the meeting Thursday, that we may come to the fire board and ask them to pay for some things at the station. I said, I don't know what those are yet, but they all looked at me, Lonnie Scott looked at me and said, well, thanks for at least giving us a heads up. So I mean, what I don't have a good sense of, and maybe I should, I don't know, like I know the Webster Township Station, you know, has a certain number of bays, Joe. I think they have 2 double deep bays, maybe it's 3, I guess I don't know. I think it's 2 double deep bays, so they could put like 4 pieces of equipment in there. You talked about trying to come up with an agreement based upon facility usage or whatever. Somebody would need to walk through all those stations to kind of do that, which they'd allow us to do. I mean, we've been in them all, but it's an interesting approach for the lease.
Would a commercial lease be a basis for?
Not a very good starting point for it. I think you'd agree. I mean, there's a good template there. I don't want to say it's unfair. You know, when this one was, the current lease for 8140 was set up so that we paid for a percentage of the uses on like electricity and different things. And that's back when the bottom level of it was DPW,
Mhm.
you know, and it's quickly antiquated. I mean, this building is gonna be 100% fire department. And basically anything that's building related is ours, and anything that's operational basis, the current leases are, it'd be the department.
Mhm.
Well, and Joe, to your point, I mean, one option could be all equipment, all equipment that isn't, you know, brick and mortar is DAFD, and that can be true across all three stations.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
So if it isn't, you know, concrete, brick, you know, roof,
Yeah.
then it's on the DAFD,
I see what you're saying.
and that's true across all three stations.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, the other caveat I would put about doing this lease and stuff, we can spend way more than it'll ever make a difference in legal fees and you guys reviewing it and drawing it up, or that's not necessary.
Mhm.
I mean, if there's a simple way to do it, we can get it to it quickly and everybody says that looks pretty fair to me too, good, go with it. That's fine.
Yeah, what I don't want is a situation that we put them over here, and people are saying, well, we can't put them over here because they don't have a lease. Well, our building, we put them anywhere we want. True, they just need permission, right? But there should be some terms of understanding, you know. You know, and the things that the fire board likes to argue around the point out is like, who's paying for the grass cutting? Who, you know, I hate that stuff.
That's why they do it, Sudie.
Right. And I always joke, well, we're gonna have Webster Township cut our grass at the fire station, just like they cut the grass at their fire.
It's in their contract.
That's what I always tell
Can I,
Yeah, please,
say
Rick.
something?
them. Please.
So, the interlocal agreement was born out of necessity. It was slapped together, let's be honest. And it served its purpose at the time, back in 84, 85. When the area was less dense, there was less property value, all that stuff. And it was fine. It limped along. Station in town was the only station. That's how it became the head station with whatever certain privileges come with it. As time went on, the only way I see that we can improve our situation is by making the other entities want or feel they need to come into this new agreement because it benefits them so much. And for it not to benefit them or for them to turn it down, their actual constituents would make fun of them because it's such an obvious coverall idea. I don't know what that is. I mean, right now, there's a population and property value. Both of which we tried hugely since 84, 85. There's never been no way to take into account that variable in a fair way. That way, the township, well, your SUV went up, your public transportation went up, so multiply this by whatever, 1.5, whatever. That's where the increase come in. Just to break it down, the most simplest of terms, runs based by cost. Well, then I gotta start looking at costs, and I don't wanna dig into all that. The costs are what the costs are. I'm sure there's some picking we could go around and do that and this. But it's gonna be pretty much a fixed cost. But how do you entice the other entities that they want to be part of that? They need to be part of that because it benefits them. They don't want to be bulldogged into it. They don't want to have to go to their people and tell them we're going to reorganize all this stuff. You make it think like it's their idea so that we can benefit. Now, I don't know what that plan is. I just know that's the sneaky way around is to make them want it. That is what will bring them into heat, is make them want it, but they need to see benefit. They need to see long lasting and an adjustable thing. And that's, I don't know if any of that's possible. I asked Dan at the meeting, Dan
Menzel?
No, Armstrong.
Oh, Doug.
Oh, Doug, yeah, Dan.
This is Dan.
I didn't recognize Dan Menzel.
Dan.
ask Doug, you go, oh, we have all this rigmarole going around. Can you pull some kind of template, or you got some kind of grand idea you wanna do like Celine tried to do it, or is there a way to run our own department based on what we can do based on projection, blah, 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 you know, it's gonna be a huge ask. A rather large project, I imagine, so do we need to hire a consultant? So do you wanna go down a road with a consultant? Do you wanna just make up our mind? So, you'll never really force them, you have to make them kinda, it's gotta be so attractive to them, and they feel like they're getting, so that's what it's all about. Is getting what you pay for. And that's really the only thing, that- and you know, you got your population. From a-
The hard part to me, the hard part to me is the people. When I got on the village board, I think we only had 2 firefighters on at any one shift.
Mhm.
And we depended on like a list of 25 on-call people that would respond when there was a fire.
Yep, when I was toned down, all the paid on call.
And now, you know, so for a long time, one of the goals of the DAFD, and it became easier when more stations were built, was how do we pay for, there's this, you know, this 2 in, 2 out rule. If there's a fire, you have to have 4 people in order to really attack a fire the way that most of them want to, which is sending 2 in if they need to go in and 2 on the outside. They won't send 2 in if there aren't 2 on the outside. So if they don't have 4, you can't go in any way. You're fighting everything from outside, and that really is just containing the fire to let the thing come down. So you're not protecting the property, you're just keeping it from spreading. So one of the advantages to all of us of having Dexter Township and Webster Township have stations is we were able to physically have more people. Okay, we're now at a position where we're talking about 6. They have watched it go, not just from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, 4 to 5, but we're somewhere between 5 on a shift and 6. And in the DFD contract, I think the minimum that's allowed is 4. I think that if people request vacations, or the chief can allow a day to go by with 4 people on duty combined throughout the 3 stations. But we would have to figure out how to be able to, I mean, to have the same level of coverage. On our own, we'd be likely going backwards, is what I'm getting at. And I don't know if people, I don't know how people feel about that. But we've worked towards, this cost structure has been in part due to the fact that we've come out of a primarily paid on call department to a full-time department.
John, mutual assistance agreements are, can't even say they're commonly practiced with every department that I've come across or assessed for civil affairs has mutual assistance agreements with a certain degree of obligation be agreed upon, and a certain degree of funding that can be agreed upon. Saying that just because City of Dexter says that, hey, our taxpayers cannot handle the burden anymore, if we don't want to be offensive, just quite literally saying, hey, we can't afford it anymore, sorry guys. Yeah, does not necessarily mean that we are going to be left stranded on our own without any possibility of creating something.
Yeah, no, understood.
And the other piece of that is that, you know, I mean, you know, fires, when they happen, you have to have people to fight them. But 99% of all runs are medical.
Mhm.
And I haven't, you know, come through every single run, but I don't remember hearing about a significant, the last significant structure fire in the city that I remember hearing about was on Central Street.
Last significant, okay, yeah, the one that really hit was in
18, 19.
16 or 17 over in here on condominiums.
Mhm.
where
Yes,
the,
that was
where
the-
the whole thing came down. They lost one building.
Mhm.
It was January of 16, I think it was.
Well, there was the apartment over here on Central that came down. Or well,
No,
no, it
that had- that
didn't
was
come down, but
minor
it had,
compared to the one that
had-
Right next to Lori's.
yeah, had significant damage.
Yeah, when we have a fire, and I don't know for sure, but I remember it used to be. I mean, other fire departments.
Oh, absolutely. They all, it's a training thing for
Right.
Well,
them. They love to come.
Well, and it gives us enough people to do what we need to do to fight.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, I mean, firefighters like to fight fires, right? They didn't join up to be fire, well, some of them do. Some of them are EMS guys and they become firefighters. But primarily, that was the thing about the paid on call. If somebody said, hey, there's a fire, you'd have 25 guys show up because they're like, there's a chance. And to your point, you'd also get people from SIO and Ann Arbor and whatnot. But the problem with those is it takes them a long time to get there. And most of the time, by the time they get there, unless it's a huge building, you know, a house is gone by the time they
I
get
have one more question. Sit a step back, and I don't know the answer to go with on-call fire. Does that work?
I think there's a question of reliability. You might get one person to show up, you might get 20 people to show up.
I don't.
Well, the other thing is that our rating for the fire department overall is based in part on having full-time firefighters versus a volunteer. department.
I think the answer, I would say yes.
Yeah.
I think it just got that. I think it worked. Maybe we use the word necessity at the time,
That's all. we can do.
because that's all we can do.
It-
It's funny when I listen to all this because I come from two other communities and both of them to this day still have on-call and they're bigger than this community. Milford and South Lyon both have that. They have a chief that's there all the time. And they might actually have an assistant chief there too. But they saying, like Joe said, these fire people are a different breed of people. And when these guys are on call, whether it's on call or not, I mean, they live and breathe for this stuff. I breathe for this. It's amazing. And you know, I don't have an opinion because, like I said, I'm just giving you what I've seen and what I've over the years, and it's amazing on how much they're into it. So I don't necessarily think if they went to an on-call, I don't think they would have a problem. That's up to you guys. It doesn't bother me either way. But I was very surprised when I started here that they had a full-time like they do.
Does that affect the city's insurance? Does that affect, go to on-call, does that affect a homeowner's insurance?
I mean,
Is that all stuff?
I think there are calculations that the insurance companies do on the ISO rating, and that there are different factors. One of which being, you know, how close is a hydrant to the property that's being protected. You know, how reliable is that hydrant? You know, what is the response time from
But there's a
the
number
fire
of different
department?
factors.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if the structure of the fire department and its staffing. is one of those.
From what I remember from a long time ago, when I was on the DAFD, there was the comment from the chief at the time was, we're getting the best rating we can get until we go to more full-time staffing, et cetera, et cetera. And just to recap, I'm not saying we should go to our own fire department. I'm saying that is one option that needs to be on the table. You know, like was said, we need to go through and lay them all out and say, look, these are all the things that we could potentially do. And I love the idea of a milk. I mean, believe me, I'd be a yes vote on that from day one. But we gotta put them all out. We gotta say, here's the 5 options that we see going forward. From you know, the first one being status quo, that's not gonna work. And potentially the one on the other end, that's gonna be very difficult to do as well. And there's gotta be a good solution in the middle. And to your point, Ray, I mean, I think the advantage to the townships is that if we all go our own way, they're gonna be hard pressed to provide the services that they want to provide to their, I mean, the whole reason they built those stations out there is to provide better service to their citizens.
Yeah, I mean, to drive from our station.
Yep.
To the northeast part of Webster Township.
Right,
It's
or
like-
northwest part of Dexter Township.
Yeah, I mean, by the time they get there,
What was her
Somebody-
name? Pat at Dexter Township, Pat?
Oh,
Pat
yeah.
Kelly?
Pat Kelly. That's what she always said. By the time the DFD gets out on the lakes, just north of where their fire station is now, the house is gone. It's
Yeah,
burned
or
out.
the heart attack is over.
Exactly, the guy's dead.
Well,
No, I know, that's the way you put it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're right, you're right.
I mean, that's literally why they wanted to put a station out there. I get it. I get it 100%, but we just gotta figure out a way that it works for all of us.
I mean, for the,
We're all paying equal amounts.
Yeah, yeah.
but that very same logic, right? If they are going it alone and they, you know, now they have to drive all the way to the other end of their own township before the heart attack is over, right? If we're not providing coverage for this.
Right,
So-
they would need to staff up for it as well.
Exactly. So that means if collaboration is over, you know, we're like, yeah, we're going our way because we can't find a mutual agreement, it will increase their burden as well. So they are saving money. And, but to Ray's point, we just need to, not to finesse, but gently provide the information that this benefits us all to find a better solution.
And the other piece of this too is, this will be an item for DAFD to look at in the future, that as they look towards, providing consistent ambulance service, do they need everyone on staff to be a firefighter? Could they have a mix of firefighters and EMTs?
I think that Doug Armstrong is going in that direction as gently as the union negotiation will allow it.
Mhm.
It was kind of a.
There was pushback that
Oh, yeah.
the firefighters know that that's objection, and
Mhm.
they don't want to be swapped out for somebody that's got the training, so to speak.
Mhm.
Well, that's just the union concern.
Yeah, no, I'm going in there.
With my view.
Please,
About
please,
the
yeah.
lease, and I didn't get to ask it.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, this is kind of a Tim question, but it'd be interesting to find out how they maintain the other stations and who's in charge of that and how is that handled with the other two stations compared to whatever we want to do at our station, because I know that could be problematic for a lot of reasons on the way the lease was wrote for our station and getting breakers and replacing light bulbs and just different things. It'd be nice if all three of them were similar, and I don't know how they handle them other state. I don't even know if they have employees that come in like we do. Be nice if they could change light bulbs.
I think the way it's set up, I think the AFD covers that at the other stations. Okay, but like if the furnace went, it'd be us.
Absolutely.
But if it was, I think that there's some language, I think, in the current templates that talks about that actually. Anyway, I remember talking about that. The hot water tank was used as the example. What if that breaks?
Well, it wouldn't be any different than our departments now. You know, DPW saw a water tank come down and you had to get someone to come in and take care of it.
Yeah, right.
I mean.
Well,
the guys
right,
can
but
do it.
it's our DPW, so it's 100% city
Right, right,
cost.
right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
What they, Dexter Township says to us, if your hot water tank, why should I have to pay a third of your hot water tank?
I guess
Yeah,
for
that's
me,
the-
for better examples, is when they drive out the door and they accidentally hit it. Or they pull, you know, how they got the plugs on top of them, I mean, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes there's some gray area there, you know, it could be.
Yeah.
Gray.
Not on the vehicle. But anyway, it'd be nice to have everything the same if that's what you're after.
Well, so Justin, if you could start on a lease, please. And, before we share the lease with the AFD, we need to make sure that our board is comfortable with the lease that we're offering. So I need you to make that somewhat of a priority item if you can. I don't want to wait till 6 months to show them the first copy, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, you're right, somebody has to take care of the building too. That's, I mean, that's been your whole point the whole time. If we build somewhere else, what's gonna happen to the old buildings? You still gotta take care of it, right?
And I think we've got a little bit of experience.
So go back to police for a second. How do you want to handle, well, is there agreement with Joe that we should not? And we don't make these decisions in the council, meeting, but I'm trying to get, we're not taking action, we're trying to get a general sense. Is there agreement that we should not have or not pay for that other half? Of the deputy
Yeah, the schools.
at the schools? I mean,
How much is PSU? 280, 160?
180 this
Is
year.
that with our discount?
Yes. I can tell you here in a second.
I mean, just in the, it's really not important with the half. I mean, it means we would go from 3.5 to 3, right? We
Yeah, I know.
cut our expenses by 14%.
I'm not worried about the money so much as I am by the actual presence of a police officer around the school, right?
Right, and I mean, to be honest, I think what I remember hearing from Donna Fisher was that originally was, we want to make sure that there's a cop there that's making sure that he's talking to the kids, finding out about
Right,
if
deer
there's
shit and all that.
gangs starting up in Dexter or
Right.
something like this. But I think what it's really evolved into is an extra teacher, right? It's an extra guy that's at the basketball games and, you know, helps keep an eye out on the kids and stuff, whereas a teacher would fill that role most of the time. It's not like he needs to carry a gun there or anything for the most part, unless somebody obviously comes into school. But I mean, we have 5 other schools or whatever that don't have a police officer that have the same concerns when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I think it really comes down to he's just an extra head for the faculty.
So I think the officer rotates around the schools. I don't think he is solely dedicated to like the high school. I think he works his way around.
And what is to me, the balance between perception of us not providing that and the actual money saving or anything from that perspective?
Well,
Perception? Or
I
everybody
mean, like,
else?
if we say, okay, we are not doing that, then is the city of Dexter saying we are not paying for having an officer in our schools?
Yeah, I personally think the angle to go at is that we ask the townships to help us with the cost of it.
Yes, I like that better.
Again, we're back to the same funding issue. On what basis? But
Well, their kids go there too.
I understand, but on how do you split it up?
I know, to me, it's part of the same. it's part
Same
of the-
discussion.
Same
Yeah.
Yeah,
discussion,
yeah.
But the other thing is, it's an opportunity for the school to save $90,000 a year as well. You know, if they say, yeah, we don't need a police officer here because the contract.
They're not gonna do that.
Yeah,
But the contract required them to do it. It wasn't like they came along willingly. If they were gonna do it themselves, there wouldn't have had been a contract to say they had to do it.
Right, but I guess the thought is, I've always thought it was a good idea to have it. What you're saying though is that we're paying for it.
Yeah.
I mean, so my way of addressing that is, if the cost structure was different, you don't object to having the officer there.
No, I mean, no, not at all.
I mean, I do think there's benefit from having the officer in the system and knowing some of the kids and being able to flush out certain things. I mean, I don't see that day to day anymore without, my kids aren't in the district.
and I think,
But I think the community sees value in that, is what I'm getting at. And I think our angle is we're the ones that paying for it, right? So I'd rather approach it with, if we could get it to be a shared cost or a different, so that it's less burden on just us. I'd still want to have the value, I think.
Right. That value is function divided by cost, right? It's
Yeah.
your dollars per whatever you're getting. And so if we could reduce the cost, then yeah, it's better value for the city.
Or value is uniqueness.
I don't know. But anyway,
It is.
from an engineering standpoint.
Mickey Mantle card is Mickey Mantle card is very unique. Not that many of them.
Not many
I
functions.
hear it sound tough up there.
But
Did I talk about scarcity?
But the thing is when it comes to the
That's one
PSU,
deal.
we got from needs to wants. And I think that the PSU at the school is definitely more on the want side. We need to have a certain amount of police coverage for our community, and so do the township. That police officer in the school, while he contributes to that in some way, if he was to disappear tomorrow, I don't think we'd have a crime wave in Dexter.
I think, well, all of these services, the police and the fire is really for at times to be prepared if something happens, right? They're gonna be there for that moment, right? And I do think that there is a value in having an officer in the schools, especially in the world that we live in these days with a lot of incidents that we hear that happen in schools across the country. Again, it's one of those things that it might not be day to day. And I agree, we don't have like oh my God, if we don't have the officer, it's gonna be, gangs running Dexter schools. It's more like if that connection with the students that you mentioned, that ability to see things and forecasting things that might happen, unfortunately, or building a relationship with a kid that could benefit and can change the trajectory of somebody's life and others. I think from that perspective, having an officer or somebody in the schools is very beneficial these days. So and again, it comes to the conversation of cost, and I do agree that it's something that with us having the schools in Dexter that we are supporting and providing, maybe we can have that conversation with the townships and say, hey, let's do this together. You're all benefiting from having somebody that can potentially mentor your kids or watch for something that might come along.
Good.
So a couple of things. Number one is with the school district, we're talking more than just the city of Dexter and two other townships. We're talking about, I think it's 7 municipalities that have representation in the Dexter school district. And so there's potentially more people to bring to the table and potentially split the costs with. But also more people that have potential to say, no, we're not on board with this. The other piece of it is, does council care, or does council have a thought on whether or not we feel like we need the additional deputy in the city during the summer versus that deputy being a shared deputy for the collaboration? Because part of either the 20% or the 50% or whatever portion the city is directly paying for, the argument is that, well, we're getting the benefit of that deputy because they're supposed to be assigned to the city when not in the schools.
They're really just assigned to the collaboration.
But I mean, if there's a call out in Webster Township and if there's a shooting out in Dexter Township, all of them are going, right? I mean, it's not.
Well, yeah, it's the collaboration, right?
Exactly.
So the school has the capability of charging everybody.
There's currently an agreement with the schools that.
I'm just saying, from other communities you're talking about.
So what I'm saying is that there are 7 municipalities that have kids that are within the Dexter school district.
Dexter school district.
They're paying, the 8 mils or 18 to the Dexter school district, correct?
So they're the only ones that have an easier way than us trying to approach 7 different communities to get more money to fund this police officer, even if it's only for half the year.
Mhm.
It's a lot easier for them to do that than us to pay them.
Mhm.
You would have to come up with some way to do that. I mean, I think probably Dexter City, Dexter Township, Webster Township. Maybe Scioto
Scioto.
Township is the other one that has a substantial, but I mean, frankly, a lot of Scioto Township doesn't go to Dexter schools, right? I mean,
I think it's about half the township goes to Ann Arbor and half goes to
does it really?
Dexter.
But I mean, like the large developments, like the trailer park down on Jackson Road is Ann Arbor schools. I mean, there's a ton of kids in there.
Is it in Ann Arbor?
Yeah.
So I was saying,
So, I mean, I think probably to your point about there being a lot of different municipalities that are included in that, I mean, there's Whitmore Lake is in there, but it's small, right? There's a handful
Mhm.
of land or cheap. I still think if, and the thing is, to your point about the benefit of that, if that guy comes back into the 3 communities that are
Mhm.
already contracting for
Mhm.
those deputies, then it's moot, right? He goes into the rotation in the overall, and you know, if there's 400 hours, they can split them up, 130, 100, 100, and 200, or 200. I mean, for that matter, I don't think it makes much difference to us.
Mhm.
We still have the benefit of having the substation here, they're working out here, and we still underrun our hours all the time. So,
Well, and the other thing that I mentioned earlier is that, you know, Webster's only paying 2,
right.
whereas us and Dexter Township are paying 3.
Yeah, so just both the Webster.
Perfect.
well,
Problem solved.
is the cost worth it? To provide us enough information that it's valuable to us, is it gonna supply us with, to make us feel we have some additional level of protection, we have like a frontline view of what's going on, an awareness factor perhaps? And you're right, I mean, we got the half because we wanted the sergeant, wasn't that how that worked, or did we just take that anyway? For the
We-
3?
Yeah, we're all 3 communities are essentially donated the sergeant for having a certain
Okay.
level of service.
But the actual officer at the school,
Is supposed to convert into a city-specific deputy during the summer
okay,
Because we're paying for it.
because we're paying for it. But whether or not that happens in practice,
What I think I would propose is say, let's propose to the townships that we divide up the cost of that deputy. And we do it based on 3 factors: population, taxable value, and usage. Throughout the, you know, we'll split up the usage for the additional time in the summertime. So we'll do it on population and taxable value. Those will be the factors that we can come to an agreement with the townships on population and taxable value being the factor that we're using in order to determine that cost and allocate that cost. It'll be a good stepping stone to the fire station.
Agreed. Like I said, I think this is part of the conversation with them.
So the police officer that's at the school during the summers, obviously not at the school.
Mhm.
And he doesn't leave our community.
supposed to,
I don't know.
The- the-
I mean, I don't see why he
the-
wouldn't.
theoretically.
You know what I mean? Because he is part of the team, correct?
So that's the kind of question we should ask when they're here in front of us.
Okay, okay.
Well, I mean, I think what Justin's saying is, in theory, there's supposed to be a person, when they're not on vacation, when they're not in training, that stays within the city boundaries. Whether they do or not, we have no idea. Because there's other deputies that are on duty also, and I think they just go where they need to go. I would think so. You know,
I mean, I think at nighttime when there's one guy on, you know, they say, spend this much time in Webster doing radar, spend this time in Dexter. I'm sure they allocate them out when there's one guy that's covering the area, at whatever those times are. and stuff, so.
Mhm.
But aside from that, yeah, I would think during the day, everybody's got their assigned person that's in their area. Would hope.
so, can I switch over to cost of the fire department, fire station for a second?
Is that this?
Well, yeah, at the first goal setting session, Marie made us aware of the concept that we're making more money on the money that we have in the bank from the bond sale than we're allowed to, then the interest is allowed. Well, the interest rate on the bonds is 3.3641 essentially, right?
Mhm.
Up to deposit. And we're making more than that in the bank. So we're gonna have to pay some back. And I guess my first question, Marie, is, first of all, I don't think you need to read any deeper than page 1 and page 2 on this. This is excellent. This table's great, right here, this one on the second. This shows exactly how much we're earning based upon the balance that's in the, in the bank, and how much more than the allowed interest is. What's interesting to me about this is in Justin's summary of our public safety cost, facility cost, we're only accounting for 300,000 in interest. And if I'm looking at this correctly, we've made 531 that's allowable
Mhm.
through the end of February. And if we are allowed to make, let's just say, it'll be more than this, $15,000 average over 10 more months, that's another 150,000.
It just depends on what the balances are.
Well, right. But I mean, they're obviously going down, right? But if we have the potential to make another $150,000 that we could use, that would be more closer to 700,000 than 300,
Mhm.
which means our deficit is less than
Less.
1.172.
What are you looking at?
So
Page
well, so
41
I'm looking at this,
of the packet.
I'm looking at this table, second, it's right
Yeah.
there. Just flip
Yep.
that over one
Yeah, yeah.
page.
And then also page 41 of 53 of the regular packet.
Right. I guess what I'm getting at is I think that I think we should keep making as much interest as we can. Okay, there's two questions that I have, Marie. Who do we write the check to?
IRS.
Okay, and what do you, I mean, do you just put this table in there? I mean, do you fold it up? You fold it up, you put it with the check and you say, here's our rebate?
So that is a good question. I've talked to other communities and they actually have they hire actuarials to figure it out, that they're talking about reporting far out and future things. So there is a form and it's part of that publication.
Okay,
It references a form. I have not researched that far yet to find out how we pay them, but I know we pay the IRS
well,
for sure.
Again? Pay them again?
So the whole point of this is that the federal government lets us do tax exempt bonds,
Right.
which saves us money because
Right.
the investors don't have to pay taxes on it. Their point is that if we make more money in interest than we're paying on it, then we're getting like a double benefit.
Right.
So they want to get their portion that they would have gotten if we hadn't done tax exempt bonds.
So because we're financially responsible, we have to pay a penalty?
Well,
Yeah, it's
so
not necessarily that,
we got
it's
the benefit of a low interest rate.
Oh, so that makes it unfair?
That's unfair.
And we're in a high.
Unless they
investment
take-
interest rate environment, Which is something that we traditionally have not. been.
unless the
Well,
IRS takes their cut.
As long as it's unfair, yeah.
I was gonna say also, unless they even exist.
Joe?
Do we pay the interest? Do we pay back all of the interest we earn above a certain amount, or do we pay the amount that the taxes would be on that interest above a certain?
No, we pay the interest above a certain amount.
Well, so are we, the other question, are we earning something? on the interest?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Are we earning something on the interest?
Yes.
Does the rules have anything to say about that?
I don't know the answer to that. I think they're just more concerned about, I was given kind of a back of the envelope way to figure this out.
No, I think this is great. I just, so,
I I hear what you're saying, it's like we get to keep the interest on the interest,
Yeah,
that's basically what you're saying.
yeah, because I mean, I mean,
So, no, I think the
Not
answer
for
is
it in,
yes.
right away.
I think the answer to that is yes, because the calculations are just based on what is your principal balance.
right,
Right.
okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, I mean, if anything over, you know,
Well, right, if that's what we think, I mean, I'm inclined, Marie, to-
wait a minute, let me reverse that in my head. Let me backtrack, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, that's why I asked, that's why I put the question out. Okay, by the way, because if we don't, Marie, if we don't, then we don't need an actuarial,
Yeah, right,
okay? I think that's the complicated part of it.
yeah.
Just to point out, SEMCOG, I believe, is a meeting where this was brought up. Just be aware that currently there is a potential action by the administration to cancel tax-free municipal bonds.
I believe that would be moving forward.
So this is a free meal that might be over pretty soon.
Yeah, the Trump administration has floated that in the past. And it's never gotten anywhere, but then again, we're in a different. world right now, so.
Well, we'll deal with that if that's what it is. So Marie, here's my suggestion. Here's my suggestion. I think I think you ought to send in a check. I think you ought to send in a check.
Now?
Yep.
Um,
And say, we think this covers. And see, and start the process. Here's our calculation.
I think this is a wonderful thing for Chris to have to deal with.
I don't,
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I think that's why Sean's saying he wants you to do this.
I don't. I don't.
I will look into it, Sean.
Yeah, you don't get that.
Wait, so the reality of this is, and what I would like to, when I saw this, the other thing that I thought about, Justin, I would like for you to project out when we're not gonna have any balance.
Yeah,
Because what this tells me is that we've spent, $2.4 million.
So a couple of things. Number one, I've asked Cunningham Limp and PIA to provide us with a estimated drawdown schedule.
Yep, that's what
Yeah, so that they're working on that, which will then feed into Marie's
And-
spreadsheet
Yep.
calculation.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I want.
Yeah. And so number two is the sheet that you're looking at. I have updated. Yeah, it's updated in the packet, but also that number
You went down.
went down
Which number?
Why did you go down?
because at the preparation of the packet, I was given a lower number,
Yeah,
but
okay,
that's- that's
Well,
not
my point is, I think it's
not
more.
a big deal, and that's easy to update. But the two numbers in red at the bottom, one is a best case scenario, which we know is underestimating, and the difference revenue minus cost is the worst case scenario, which we know is overestimating.
Right.
So the reality is going to fall somewhere in the middle.
True, but
So looking at just that bottom number is
well, my point is, well, there's $400,000 up there that isn't
Yep,
accounted for.
agreed.
Is my point.
Yep. and if we
40% of the best case or
Mhm.
20% of the worst case.
Yep.
Which is a big number.
yeah, and if we sell MAV, that looks better.
Yep, understood.
But I mean, even with that number, with that number going up 400,000 and with the sale of MAV, there's still a delta.
Oh, understood. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but
Yeah.
but it's pennies on the dollar at that point.
It's much less.
It's much less, yeah,
Yes.
much less. No, we haven't even asked the AFD for anything yet.
This is true.
I tell you, this whole arbitrage thing, has some learning experience.
Well, I'm just saying.
Learning all the time.
Look, nothing happens fast with the IRS. Okay, now, but, I mean, usually your tax situation is over in a year. I mean, we figured this out. I don't see any reason why we couldn't say, okay, here's the first year's worth, or here's some
Mhm.
point.
Mhm.
for-
Well, it did say that there's a mechanism that if you overpay, you can get your money back.
Yeah, I mean, but I think you could go through the end of our last fiscal year, is what I would do, June 30th of 2024. And say, hey, as of that point in time, we think we overpaid by what, $104,000 or 37. Then if it's pennies, if there's interest on it, or you know, if there's extra,
I would have to run that, run that by.
what's the negative?
I don't,
And you're gonna pay it at some point. But the longer it sits there, we're gonna end up with more of a calculation. So if we don't have it,
I see where you're going.
you're simplifying.
Yeah.
You're simplifying the calculation by getting rid of it,
Yeah, no, I understand.
in my opinion.
Just, I don't know, it's one of those things like, dissolve the LDFA, and I called the state of Michigan, and they said, we don't know how to dissolve an LDFA, nobody's ever done it.
Right. Right.
Great.
This may be something similar.
Well, right, but my point is, I'd rather be ahead of it than behind it.
You know, I-
Yeah, and you're doing, this is great information. I haven't had a chance to read all of this, but I got through the first 3 pages, and those are the thoughts that,
So in the supplement,
Yep.
the IRS document that was provided, I made some highlights and I made some notes in red. Just
Yeah.
those are things that I added to that document, just so you're all aware.
one of the other things that's in the supplement, I just want to touch on it real quick. We all got the email from
Yes.
Stephanie and Rick Kraus, that live in Huron Farms. Did all of you get that email
Yeah.
related to the Huron, the
Connect.
potential, the Huron Connector project? I don't ever reply to all on an email that we're all on, because we can't really start a conversation in an email, right? So, but I did ask, I did copy Justin on my response to them, and I did ask him to put that in here. I reached out to MDOT's office of the rail on Thursday of this week, and the picture that precedes the email are 3 potential spots where you could come between houses, go north out of the subdivision to try and go across the railroad. I'm gonna send an email into the office of the rail to show them this and ask them if there's any potential way that they would say yes to allowing that. I'm not saying that means we have to build it. The next, because this is not gonna be easy, no matter how it goes. But if you pull up the permit on the website, it says that this stretch of track that the state owns between Kalamazoo and Dearborn, that there's no grade crossings allowed. There's a sentence. There's no new grade crossings allowed. Okay, and it's also, it would also have, there's also, Amtrak also has a approval portion of this, even if the state were to say they think it's okay. But I'm starting with MDOT since they own the track. So I just want everybody to know that's what I've started to do so far. I didn't, when I first got the email, I was like, do I just respond and say it's cost prohibitive, or I thought, well, I don't know who to call, so I'll always call.
Sorry, so I think Sanam had her hand
Go
up
ahead,
first.
go ahead. So this topic came up at last meetings of planning commission, and I think that's how some of the neighbors, and there was interest from the commissioners of planning commission to to look into this. So thank you for doing that. I don't know who else received this email, but there was another resident, Rachel Graneman, that also sent an email for similar.
Tom Phillips, who's on our
Yes.
planning commission and has lived in Huron Farms a long time. Tom has, asked the question several times before.
Yes.
There's been discussion of, could you go over it and somehow come down on the other side? People have said, well, what if you had a tunnel? Could you go under it, like we do in the viaduct,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to those questions, we have to, but the permitting process at the state specifically says that Amtrak has to offer permission,
Mhm.
but MDOT does have some say since they own it. But it also says, the permit is primarily there for utilities. They do allow utility crossings, either overhead or below.
I remember reading something recently in news that the city of Ann Arbor is doing something, I think, in Barton Hills.
Yes.
That is a town
Barton Pond,
Barton Pond, something like that.
yeah, they're trying to put something there too, right?
That's why during, I'm sorry, during the CIP, that asked that it be revisited.
Yeah.
And that's why it's in your memo for your meeting on Monday. To provide input, so,
Well, I started a conversation. I'm happy to turn it over to you guys if you want to follow up on the idea. The Sierra Williams that I spoke to was very nice. She openly admitted that she couldn't make the decision. It would have to go up the chain for the question. But
we've worked with her, not to interrupt you, but we've been working with her on the beginning portion of the water main extension.
okay,
Her office and the people in that particular portion of the process were marvelous to work with.
yeah, so all right, perfect.
Nice.
Big difference from all the feedback we got before.
Well, there's still rocky parts, but
No.
it's in dealing with Amtrak right now. It's not dealing with MDOT.
It's a two-part thing.
Yeah. But just moving forward.
Yeah, and I feel like when this was first brought up as a concept a number of years ago, I think we had OHM do a very high level evaluation, and I think the thought at that time was either going under or going over. We do have sewer main between Ulrich and the railroad track, which could make going under difficult. Not impossible, but I mean, anything can be done with enough money, right?
Right.
So in either case, or in whatever case we are able to evaluate that might make sense to be able to do, and we'll meet with Amtrak or MDOT's approval, whether it's at grade, below, or over. If we decide that this is a priority and we don't have the dollars to be able to contribute towards this project, one potential option that we could explore is a special assessment district, which would be a defined area that essentially we would charge the residents for the cost of the project.
We talked about that early on with the Westbridge connector before.
Mhm.
And at that time, there was no real.
So all three of these are utilities. I mean, I think two of them are storm, one sewer, and you're right, the sewer runs down the side, so that would be, I don't know, if the easement, but we had.
So I selected them because they are the options that provide the greatest distance between homes.
Correct.
And Tim, have you looked at this map?
This is the first time I've seen this one.
Because I
And I can
think,
send him the utilities.
because I think we have two storm crossings and we have the sewer. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
Like you said, it would make a lot.
Again, my goal is always, I just wanted everybody to know how I responded to, especially how, I don't know if you know these folks in Huron Farms or not.
No, I don't know.
But I mean, Tom Phillips has been a big advocate of this idea, and I think it's if we could make it work, I'm all for connecting the subdivision to the metro park. I mean, we have that in Westridge, and it's, you know. And it's one of those things that you never get the answers, so, you know. More and more people think it's easy to do it, but it isn't easy to do. We gotta communicate that too, or what the difficulty is.
I did get the emails and, part of the discussion is, well, they have that at Westridge, but so we should have it as well. You gotta remember that Westridge was fundamentally different because there was absolutely zero pedestrian access from Westridge to the city. You couldn't walk there. There was no sidewalk on Dexter Pinckney to even get to the viaduct. Going under the viaduct was taking your life into your hands. And we literally, there was a path that was worn down going over the railroad tracks that kids and families pushing baby strollers were going over the railroad track. It's insane. So, I mean, fundamentally different because while it's not optimal, there is a path. We talked about it at the last council meeting. You can go back down through the condos, go down Second Street, you can access the path. It's a long ways. We can make it better by providing dedicated or better sidewalks and stuff like that. Also, I don't remember how that was all funded and everything, but I think the majority of the funding that's going underneath the railroad tracks came from the metro parks.
Well, so. Let me answer that question.
Yeah.
Let me just say, I'm not saying that this has to jump to our first priority. I just wanted all of you to know how
Yeah.
I responded and what I found out when I contacted them. So
Right.
Basically, as part of the CIP, what planning commission is recommending to council is let's start putting some money into the different years, or at least starting to study it and know exactly what you already said, which is, can it be done? If so, what's the cost? If there are challenges, what are they? Can they be overcome? If not, just start at least a study, planning study process and establish a funding. And that's why it's identified in the CIP as a, looking for a, some kind of planning grant to kind of kick that off.
Joe, the west side connector. Goes our park under,
Yeah.
and connects to the metro park property. When Westridge was set up as a subdivision, there was 100-foot easement granted on the back part of the property to connect
Do the trail.
Hudson Mills to essentially the other side of the bridge of the road.
Yeah.
And because at that time in 2012, the Metro Park had put a pathway in from North Territorial 2.5 miles south to the little turnaround.
Right.
You can park at the Metro Park, like
Go out,
2.5 and go
go
back
out.
out, but you couldn't get through the village.
Right.
That segment was funded by, if I remember right, some type of either road commission / county parks grant that they got.
Right.
And then the Metro Park put in money, and we contributed, I think, $100,000.
That's what we committed.
We committed to help. And, you know, that was really the kickoff of this whole trail network, the border to border thing.
And I think, didn't we have responsibility for the cost from Eastridge to the connection? The spur we had, right?
Yeah, the spur that goes into the subdivision.
Yeah,
Was 100%
right.
village cost.
Yeah.
That portion of it.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm not saying I'm against doing this. I'm not at all. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that it's not so simple as, well, that's over there, so we should do it here. But one other thing that I would offer as a potential, if it helps in the discussion with MDOT or Amtrak or whatever. I mean, I think we ought to offer this crossing right here as a trade. Tell them we'll take this crossing out right here on Broad Street and just leave the one on Central and say, we'll take this one out and then they get rid of a vehicle crossing in exchange for a pedestrian crossing. Now, maybe that's worse for them and they say, we'd rather have a vehicle crossing than a pedestrian crossing. But I mean, if they can't have any additional ones, this one is redundant. This one doesn't do anything except grant access up to Huron Drive or Huron Street. And, you know, traffic could just as easily go to Central and then go up Central and get to the same exact spot. I mean, it's not ideal with the fire department here right now because it's longer for them to go around to get into wherever else they need to go. But in the long term, I think we could get rid of this crossing. Now, maybe there's a reason not to do that, but again, if we didn't have this crossing here, we could trade off.
I mean, they got two ways currently right now to get to where they need to get on the other side.
Yep.
And then also works in our advantage that when one of these crossings goes down, they gotta do something to it, we've got another crossing, so.
Understand?
I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a benefit. We used to have 3
Where was the third one?
down the road.
Really?
They used to come down this road. And we got rid of that.
That was a less defined.
Right, but we ended up closing that, and then I can't remember what we got. I honestly. Didn't know that.
Like I said, I mean, I think all things considered, we could get rid of that one. I mean, I understand there's redundancy for the fire department, but you know,
Well, for and utilities.
in utilities, yeah, I mean, but the thing is, you're talking about one street here, right? And the question is it that much worse to drive from Broad Street to Central on Huron and double back? Right, I mean, you're talking about,
Fire departments out there now.
right, but they're gonna go out Central Street.
No, I mean, they could come from the other. End.
True.
Would you get rid of the ability for pedestrians?
I mean, I don't know that this provides a lot of benefit for any of that stuff. I mean, yes, I would, if trading this would give us a access point for Huron Farms, I would make that trade. That's me personally.
So I get where you're coming from. It seems very logical. As someone who lives in a community where being cut off from the downtown in a more convenient way, whether it's car or pedestrian,
Yeah.
it has an effect on the neighborhood. And although you could still get to Central, like I can still get into downtown Northville, going all the way around.
Yep.
That disconnection affects that neighborhood.
Understand.
And so the only thing I would say is one, I appreciate that you acknowledge that. And 2 is just to keep that as part of the discussion if that's going to go forward.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is Amtrak is planning to work on this crossing this fall.
Mm.
To make the upgrades to this section, to allow for high speed.
Got it.
So my guess is after this fall, they're probably not gonna want to come back and, I mean, maybe they're so desperate for as many crossing closures as they can get that they would do whatever. But with the investment that they're making along this stretch, my guess is the value of then coming back to close this.
Understand. So it's a great time to talk about it.
I mean, but at the same time, what if they can cut their losses by not having 2 crossings to upgrade for high speed, right? 100% agree that community is gonna get cut off, but at the same time, I have to acknowledge my bias, right? Because that's the community I also live in, right? But now we're also connecting a community with young families to a park, right? So how about that value?
Oh, don't
Yeah,
disagree with you.
but I'm saying like, so very good variables, very 100%. Right? Redundant, they are very close to each other. That's true. That's no matter how you cut it, no matter you like or dislike it, the fact that these 2 crossings are.
Well,
100 yards apart.
and
The city ended up with.
Well, and I don't know that we're at the point of saying that we have to trade one for the other, right? I mean, there are alternatives to an at-grade crossing for Huron Farms.
No, and I mean, personally, I mean, I know it's not very popular in a lot of planning areas and stuff. I mean, it makes Huron Street one long cul-de-sac, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, frankly, I live on a cul-de-sac. I don't have traffic that goes past my house except for my neighbors. I mean, the once in a blue moon that I see a car comes down the street, turns around and goes back to the end of the street, drives out, you're like, what the heck was that? Most often it's the city doing their water meter reading or something like that. And, you know, I think that's great, because every summer I see all the kids playing out in the street and stuff. And I mean, I think people that are along here might be happy to not have the additional traffic going through, because in the fall, when the cider mill's open, you wouldn't have traffic going down here on the street. You know, it would just come to the cider mill and that would be it. And, but again, it's my personal opinion on how that goes. I definitely see where those people saying, well, crap, now I gotta go an extra half a mile if I'm gonna walk into town. And it could be like somebody that lives right there and says, I can see that, but it's half a mile away.
Mhm.
I get it 100%. Believe me, that's exactly where we were at in Westridge. We're looking at it going, it's right there. I can't get there.
No,
The,
yeah.
the alternative is true as well for folks walking to City Hall.
True.
You know,
And-
to jump on what Dan said too, think about it, is, and everyone was talking about that. So you, in that is essentially shut that down. So now you got Census Street built, it's also in Census Street needs work. The only one way is to go to the viaduct. You guys think the viaduct's messed up now?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Or,
Oh, fine.
or you have to go, or if you have to go the other way down to Zeeb.
Stand your side of the pain.
I'm telling you, we ought to paint a stripe down the middle of that thing. I think we should go up there and paint it. I'll get a paintbrush. That's
Some of
it.
them teeth that hang off in there. Yeah.
Yeah, just quickly that, you know, we can talk about people going this way or that way to cross where the crossings exist, but nobody does that in practice. The kids go through or walk over the rails in Huron
Mhm.
Farms
Right.
all the time. That's the problem, right? And so yeah, what we talked in planning commission was to for our CIP to put money towards study of it, not necessarily doing it, but that to be able to have the study and say whether if we do it or not do it, to have a better way of describing why. But at the same time, it will not make a difference of people crossing the rails at their wherever is most convenient for them.
Yeah, no, you know, I almost said I survived it. You know what I mean, as a kid living in the city, but it's totally different now.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be totally different. The trains are gonna be traveling how fast?
Very.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there is a big difference in when I was a kid and all the rest of the kids were with the trains.
Mhm.
Yes.
So that does make a huge difference. Not gonna have too much time to react.
Well, let's learn about what the process will be, and what the approvals are needed, and if there's any opportunity there. I personally like the flexibility of two drivable crossings and two pedestrian crossings here. One of them right now is, I think, our border trail designation through the village, just to keep bicyclists off of Central, so to speak. I don't know if anybody follows those signs or not anymore, but technically they're up there. But again, my goal in asking Justin to put it in here was to let all of you know how I responded and the contact that I made. Justin, if you wanna take over the communication with Sierra,
Mhm.
we could talk together about that. I wanna get back to her next week if I can, just to follow up on what I said I provide, so. I'm all for it being in the CIP as a study. I think there's a lot that can be done without spending a lot of money.
That's why we
Okay,
have to try
would be,
for a
would be,
grant
would
first.
be my. I mean, just communicating with Amtrak and MDOT doesn't cost anything other than either my time or staff time or somebody's time. I'm used to going after permits, so I'm happy to help with that.
There was intent in 2014 to this end, correct?
Say that again?
There was an attempt to build the Huron Farms connector in 2014, right? It was proposed, priority, desirable, total cost, assuming. But it didn't-
I
didn't
can't
happen,
remember
right?
which year it was brought up. It's been brought up, multiple times.
I don't know.
Especially after, I mean, when we had the connectivity I think 2012 was when we did the connector on 11 or 12 was when we did the west side connector from that point in time. And then the questions were asked, what about the other subdivisions?
Yeah, I think that the answer was, it's gonna be $1.2 million, and so we shelved it.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah, well, and I think it was more, I think it was closer to 10 million. That was the number that was thrown out. Mhm.
If we could get permission.
If we could get permission.
Is that to go over?
I believe
Yes,
so.
my
I think it was to
recollection
go
is
over.
to go over.
Yeah.
Other topics. So are people generally thinking, I'm gonna go back to the fire station, costs and such. Are we talking about exploring about potential other bond? Or are we thinking cash?
So, I mean, depending on what other sources we can draw from, we likely have the general fund balance space to deal with it. If we want to go that way.
What portion of the cost is eligible for the street fund to contribute?
500,000, which is included in
Okay,
In that spreadsheet.
number, that is the number?
that's our already budgeted and already baked in.
Okay. So are we thinking, at one point in time, I don't know if you asked the question last time about, can we do $1 million bond? So now,
Yeah, so if we have some additional interest money potentially for coming in, and if we sell math, then this number will come down significantly. And the rest of it could be easily covered with our, I wouldn't say easily because it's money,
Reserves.
but from our reserves. But there are other, to me, I think it's in that sense, I wouldn't see that we need another bond, but also that's my opinion. And there are some other potential grants. I know some of our, I sent maybe an email to
Mhm.
you and Sean, I can't
Mhm.
remember, that there are, our senators and representatives have their community funds earmarks potentially taken away. So they're looking
Mhm.
for any projects that they can use the money that potentially they have right now. There's a lot of work potentially there, but I think it's worth exploring. And some of them only specifically use their earmarks for requests coming from municipalities.
The sale of the property. We're gonna bank on that. But we should look at a bond because I don't.
Yeah.
That's something I just think that we need to think about.
that's my concern too. I'm happy to put that up right away.
But how long does it take to go through? a bond? Can you back out of it if all of a sudden? Or what are we gonna do with the money? They, we get the bonds and we sell the property.
Depends on the size of the bond, and yes, you can back out until it's sold. People may not like you.
We don't like it anyway.
Anyway, I just need that,
Who cares?
thinking that the sale of that property.
I mean, depending on the size of the bond, you could have some significant money put into, the bond. And if you back out, you lose that money, you still, your bond attorney.
Your fixed costs are fixed costs for
Yes.
1 million
Mhm.
versus a 10.
Mhm.
Well, no, because like, the one that you're not gonna be doing the official statement, we would float that like we did, with the ones that, the road bond, that was bought by Chelsea.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be doing the whole official statement, and that's what really starts adding money.
Does prepayment cost more than the higher interest rate because of prepayment?
Repayment.
Like if we said, like to Dan's point, we issue the bond and 6 months later we sell the mad property, I'm like, cool, we can pay off the bond.
Oh, well, I mean, there's call dates baked in there,
Mhm.
so you have
There's
to wait.
what?
Call dates, like you can't call it before a certain date.
Mhm.
Those would be baked in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't pay sooner than.
It's not like a car payment. It's not set up like a car payment where you could pay ahead and.
You're guaranteed
You have to-
the
you-
investor a certain amount of it.
Right.
Until a certain date.
I think, Michelle, you had your hand, and we'll go to Dustin.
And it's probably the same thing.
Yeah, at this particular point, the challenge with selling isn't finding a buyer. Because you probably could find a buyer. It's the comfort knowing that the vote of the people will allow the sale.
Mhm.
So being that that is based on elections, that would be something you want to start doing now. Regardless of whether you're gonna go out for a bond, you can do these things.
Yeah.
Because once
Yeah, so,
you've got that answer, oh, yeah.
and so we're working on ballot language right now with the city attorney, to confirm that what we've started to develop is correct. But we could have it on as soon as August. We could have it on a ballot as soon as August. We'll need to make the final decision either at the first meeting in April or the second meeting in April to vote to put that proposal forward. But there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to do that. Two other things. Number one is, I know the DDA didn't have a quorum at the last meeting, but is there potential from the DDA to be able to help put money towards this project?
So we only had 4 people show up to the DDA meeting. 5 people showed up. to the DDA. I went through with those 5 people how the DDA gets its money, and I'm planning to do that again. I think we're targeting to have a workshop on 2 Thursdays from now. Are we still trying to do that? The
Yep.
3rd? We're gonna have a workshop and talk about EDA's budget and funding.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna, I showed them that there's maybe we could share the DDA budget with councils.
Mhm.
The last one, if you could, so that those that haven't seen it, and Pablo was online, so you heard me talk about it a little bit, but the DDA levies 22 mills, 22.4 mills. 4.4 of those mills are our street fund. They collect, money off the street fund based upon the 60 million in taxable value that's in the DDA. And one of the requests that Justin, you had made or suggestion was that maybe the DDA could help with the Main Street project
Mhm.
to the tune of $90,000. And what perspective I put for them is the DDA gets $800,000 in revenue off of the 22 mills. And essentially 1/5 of that, 4 mills out of the 22 or 4.4,
Mhm.
1/5 of that is from our street fund that we would otherwise be putting in the streets. And so
Mhm.
160,000 of the 800 really would be something that we would be investing in the streets. And I sort of said to them,
Mhm.
my expectation is that we're gonna be doing that. If the DDA is gonna collect that money, those money should be reinvested in the streets, that kind of thing. So I think the answer to your question is, we're gonna talk about, can they contribute in different ways?
Mhm.
I think they understand that we would like them to contribute to the fire station.
Mhm.
I've asked them if they would contribute to public safety costs.
Mhm.
We've asked if they would contribute, well, it was in the memo.
Mhm.
All those things have been put in
Mhm. place.
The decision needs to be made now
Mhm.
at the DDA board.
Yeah, and I will just throw out that, from, I haven't gone through, and fully developed the 25-26 budget yet. I think I'm more nervous about where we're at in the general fund than I am about where we're at in the roads funds.
No, understood. And the DDA doesn't have to put, money in the different categories. They can
Mhm.
spend it however they
Mhm.
want, right? It's one pot for them.
Mhm.
What I was trying to give them a perspective on is
Mhm.
the money that we would otherwise have. I mean, they're collect 10 or almost 11 mills that they collect are from our general fund. We would otherwise have $400,000 in our general fund
Mhm.
if there wasn't a DDA, was my point.
Mhm.
Right, so they're giving us 133,000, I think,
Mhm.
for city
Administrative
administrative
services and downtown.
and
DPW.
downtown, yeah,
Mhm.
and Doug, okay, and combined, yeah, combined, right, yeah. Doug Finn, who's the chair, he understands the thinking. He said that was really good that we went through it because he said maybe there are things that we should be prioritizing to fund before we talk about projects.
Mhm.
And that's the mindset that I'm trying to introduce there.
Mhm.
The most important one that I want them to fund is the line item for public safety, because once the line item is there,
Mhm.
we can keep doing it every year.
Mhm.
Okay, the projects are projects,
Mhm.
right? But the annual stuff back is what we need.
And to that point, that's gonna take a larger discussion, whether, Scotland's always something regarding what the DDA carries and the money. And it is more project based. In his opinion, looking at the act, then it's fire services. So that's gonna have to be part of our DDA budget workshop. But that communication will be shared. with the council.
But he didn't say we couldn't spend it on that.
Basically, that's what he said.
Oh, I don't think so. I disagree hardly. I don't even know why we asked him that question. It's no different than downtown maintenance.
I think it's part of the discussion that we'll have to have.
I don't know why we even went there.
We asked him, I'll step back. When he was at not this past meeting, but the meeting before, when the fundraising question was asked at the DDA from HWPI,
That's a specific question.
that was a specific question. But the topic of fire safety or fire and police safety has come up at different times. I thought that the DDA could fund through the fundraising if it benefited the district, even though the connector might not be in the district. And so he checked on that, but then he also checked on fire, because that was something he wanted to know and wanted us to know for himself.
Other communities do this. It's not.
I get
He's
that.
wrong.
I get that. And
He's
he
wrong.
has,
And we shouldn't.
he acknowledged that, Sean. But that'll be a discussion you guys will have. Bottom line from a staff perspective is whatever funds the DDA uses, that has to be baked into their development and TIF plan. So whatever decision DDA and ultimately council makes, because the DDA is updating their development and TIF plan, fire services hasn't been addressed. If that decision get made to do that, then we'd make sure we take it in before that.
This will give him move on to the second point.
Sure.
As a part of our annual community stabilization revenue that we get from the state in their infinite wisdom has decided that they're going to start putting money into our GO bond for the fire station, the bond repayment fund that we've established. And I think last year it was 1.73, 1.75 mils or something like that. That we need that were sent out in taxes. And because
1.6865 to be exact.
of from last year or well, current year.
24,
Yeah. And so I think when we're going through the process, we were looking at, not greater than 2 mils. Right now we're at 1.63, 1.6,
Whatever I just said.
well, whatever Maurice just said.
1.6865.
Thank you. But so because the state is now putting dollars into that fund through community stabilization, that millage rate is going to be able to be dropped down by 0.2 something mils. So sorry, Marie. I should have given you a minute to prepare. But long story short is that millage will be able to be dropped.
0.4482.
Oh, that's more than I thought.
That's what I said.
Oh, I thought that was I thought it was 0.2 something.
Just
Um,
make your point.
Yeah, but point is, that millage can drop if council wanted to play that game of keeping the millage where it's at. We could up the general fund millage in equivalent amount and keep taxes the same.
And that actually could be lower. I don't know, since this is the first time they've done this, I don't know if we're gonna get any supplemental money in May
Mhm.
that goes into the GEO bond as well. And one of the things with the GEO bond, I can't carry more money in that account than is necessary to pay for the bond, plus a little bit of cushion, for tax tribunals and whatnot. So no matter what, if the state is giving us that money back, I am going to have to lower the millage rate. You just got to. So.
And so, I mean, that'll be almost half a mil.
Question, what right now is our statutory amount that we could levy additional?
For general fund?
What's the amount we have left?
About a mil,
Is
Yep.
it that much?
Mhm.
a little less, I think.
We can levy 11.8508, I know it's in the sideways. We can levy 11.8508, right now we're at 10.89.
So just shy of a mil.
Just shy of a mil.
Yeah. So we could conceivably
Mhm.
recoup that entire amount.
Mhm.
It would-
Which if a mill generates 277,000, I think. Half of that is 130, 140.
Right, so it'd be 125,000.
I've
Mhm.
said before, we should be at the max, I think.
Well, okay, so what if that ends up being a one-time payment? We just,
That's a good question.
well, I mean, if we wanted to keep things level, we just drop the general fund back down and leave that one, or
That's how you do it.
or just leave it the way it is and it would go up by 0.44.
I will say that the bond rating companies like that we have space left in our millage.
Mhm.
Just throwing that out there. Mention that frequently.
Mhm.
Already.
But if we wanted to, with the geo bond dropping, we could raise the general fund millage up to
Yep.
recapture that amount.
And we do that every year in June.
Mhm.
Well, how do people feel about that? So we give Justin direction as he plans the budget. Do you wanna keep the overall millage rate the same and take advantage of that tax?
I mean, it's a relatively painless way to get partway to what you were talking about.
I agree.
It does lead into the buffer, but it still leaves some buffer, it leaves a half.
And it doesn't have to be forever. I know we kind of did that with the road millage where we bumped it up a quarter of a mil and just left it there. But ultimately it's up to council.
How much money is in our
Oh, so we're talking, the geo bond is dropping 0.44 of a mil. 1 mil generates about 277,000, at least that's the last number I remember. And so, you know, if we're talking about half, we're talking 130, 140.
0.44 would be about 122.
Yeah, correct. We,
It's more expensive.
I mean, and we know.
Logic on this too.
Well, I mean, the military is there for a purpose. And as a society, we don't like to go taxed, but it's a mechanism to generate revenue when things are needed, and I don't think we should be ashamed to use it to its fullest extent. If the city benefits from it. And if we're either minimizing the depletion of our reserves or whether it's going to a direct project, it's there. I mean, every year that we don't levy it, you can make two arguments. You could say we're saving people money, but we're also not addressing the things they're expecting us to address. But I don't have any problem with it. I think the community could certainly afford it. We might get a little bit of pushback from some, you know, might hear a few things, but by and large, we don't generally hear too many complaints on taxes. I don't think.
Well.
Well, we also haven't, we have been very slow and at times not increasing the city's taxes. So we have been, in my opinion, very conservative on what, as the city, we have done. And I think helping our residents to also understand that when they talk about their taxes going up, it, you know, the last, in November, we passed 4 county millages that will add to that. So being able to have that conversation and educate our residents that what is the difference, and we have kept our taxes in the city and what we do stable and low for many, many years. And still, I think even with the little bit of increase, we are not going anything that is unreasonable or I think we are still in a conservative approach to it. So being able to have that conversation would be important.
And I do share that with people, that the increases that they've seen are coming from the
Yeah.
state statutory amount that we have no control over and voted villages. And
Yeah.
that's where their increases are coming from.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's still.
Yeah.
About that. 5% was hard on people.
Yeah.
It was really hard on people.
The city has done such a well job. And we have survived all of that. We have everything about 150%, 37 years of that. They ask council in this county, they have spent the money wisely. There's so many things that people don't worry about until they're a problem. And we've got that, the water, sewer, the storm, infrastructure for our wastewater, our water treatment plants, our buildings. We are so far ahead
Mhm.
of the rest of the country. It's incredible.
Mhm.
And that's because of all the council doing the right things at the right time. Sometimes we have to do the wrong thing. But we're surviving. I mean, we didn't have the money, you know, like on screw pumps and stuff, but we survived. But for the most, our community is in much better shape than anything outside of the school.
If I can just hit on a couple of other different topics real quick. So we, Michelle and I both talked to Roy Townsend this week with County Parks. And it looks like they're not going to start construction on the Dexter Chelsea connector bridge until fall of this year, fall of 25. We did have those funds budgeted in the current fiscal year in 24-25, which it's looking like we will not expend those dollars. So what we'll likely see is a positive general fund balance this year because of that. But the cost is going to hit next year, along with likely the Mill Creek Park Playground project. The grant dollars that we should be receiving are likely going to fall in next fiscal year. And so that project is going to hit. I met with Marcus from OHM and their on-staff architect at Hotel Hickman this last week, along with Tim. And they're going to be putting together a proposal to
Who did you say is working on it?
OHM.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're putting together a proposal to start with basically a building assessment, electrical, mechanical, all that stuff. And they're getting me a proposal that's supposed to be phased that goes through bid docs. But that a lot of that work, it'll probably start this fiscal year, assuming, it's a proposal that council is on board with. We'll present it to council for approval, but a lot of that work would also likely happen next fiscal year. And at least the trail project and the 80/50 main project are both budgeted in the current fiscal year, but are likely to hit next fiscal year.
I know, at least, I don't know if everybody got it, but I got a couple of emails about the throne bathroom
Yeah.
setup that they use in Ann Arbor.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's an option for us, if it's a good option. I've seen it in Ann Arbor because on the restaurant across the street, I've seen it there at the park. Haven't looked in it or anything like that, but I don't know how that might be a comparison or something to consider for downtown bathrooms, or like where the porta potties go wherever they go. And I don't know what kind of hookups they have. I assume there's a sewer and water hookup, but I don't know.
So I don't think I was on that email.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it. and send it to
Okay.
you.
Is it like a drop in place?
It's like literally, if you're driving down Liberty, it's just, it's a unit that's like, 8 or 9 feet tall and maybe I don't know, 5 feet by 8 feet or 10 feet big as a footprint. And it's just sitting there. It says throne on the side of it. And it's like I think the pay-per-use, I'm not positive. But it's essentially a deluxe porta potty that's there, but I think it's a permanent hookup. So.
No, I think you pay a contract for them to come in and clean it.
Well, I agree. And the thing is, it might address all the things that we talked about
Right.
as the issues that could potentially be with downtown bathrooms and how do you manage them and clean them and da-da-da-da and all that stuff.
Certainly is better than just porta potties.
Right. So I'm just suggesting that that's a possibility, something to look at. Because I know we were looking at that for Hotel Hickman and stuff, and that could be a good.
Mhm.
Okay.
Did you mention putting them where the porta potties is? Is that part of?
Yeah, I mean,
No, I'm not saying, I'm just, I think there might be a sewer leak there somewhere that would rain on. If you have to look back at
when you say where the porta potty, do you mean on the east end of the park,
Yeah, is
closest,
that what you were-
closest to WISD?
Yes.
Yes, yes. And just as a side note on that,
Cleaning
I do
mechanism
think,
for it.
I would like as a goal to bring back the dedication of at least that part of the park to park in lieu of it being the right of way or / road or whatever that east end of the monument park is, to dedicate it as a park. I would like to get that done in the near future.
What if we want
Is
to
it-
put a road there, Joe?
Well, you can run on that, right?
That's still ain't dedicated?
Well, no.
I remember when the houses were there, but. Oh, all right.
I forwarded you the email, Justin.
Thank you.
Dexter Weaver, what was the only thing that's-
There was a woman that worked for the Dexter Weaver that.
Yeah, way before Lisa. Donna? Donna?
I sent him the film.
they know.
Donna Keith? Yeah. You remember it so long.
Okay, other topics?
So I am getting near the end of a draft of the employee handbook update, which I plan on sending over to Mel Muskovitz at Dykema for attorney review here shortly. And 2009. So it's an overhaul. It's a complete overhaul of what we had. Would council be interested in having a work session on that before it comes as a item to council?
You would know better than I would. I dread looking at those type of documents.
Well, I mean, you know, I'd provide you with the 2009 document and the current draft, but with a memo that highlights all the significant changes. Yeah.
I mean, my assumption is it's not gonna significantly change how we interface the employees,
Mhm.
and that's what I would
Mhm.
hope for.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm usually, no matter if it's good for some people or bad for some people and good for others, or however that works out, changing things always brings up
Mhm.
discontent. So, I mean, I understand it's gotta be updated for the
Mhm.
most recent employment law and da-da-da and all that kind of stuff. And if it's that kind of stuff, no big deal, but I agree with Dan, highlights of whatever it is, I'll be good with that.
So there are some proposed benefit changes that come along with that. And I think that those are the things that I would want to highlight the most.
Understood.
So I'm hoping to have the draft done next week and have it sent over to Mel Muskovitz. I don't know how long it's going to take him to review. But I would hope not more than a couple weeks. And then we're also picking back up on the water and sewer ordinance amendments. And Sean, I know you had sent me an email to look at the fire code.
Yeah, we should update the fire code. Well, we have an adopted fire code, but it references the 2005
Mhm.
stuff, and we're 20 years past that.
Mhm.
That one, figuring out what the impacts are is gonna be a lot.
It's a very detailed document.
I mean, I know, like, I would guess includes carbon monoxide detection there or something like that, or maybe that falls under building codes and not fire code, I don't know. But
Well, I guess the question is there any, I mean, we haven't, does anybody, do you even know what's covered in the current fire code?
no, that's what I'm saying, carbon monoxide might be,
Well,
might
my-
not.
Some of the things.
Well, I know, because you're closer to it.
Yeah.
My point is, why wouldn't you want to be under the current one? I get that we could find reasons not to. But I mean, if we were, if somebody came and made the statement that we're operating under the current fire code.
Yep.
Would anybody think that was a dumb statement?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Okay, now, I realize, I mean, there's all sorts of resistance we could have to this, but I think we made some exceptions when we adopted the
Mhm.
last one.
Mhm.
And those can, I think, fairly easily be pointed out. If we recall the last 2005 document, or whatever it was, where we passed that, I think we passed it in 2006 or 7, it was after the, because it references the
Mhm.
5 code, and we would be referencing the
the 2021 or the 2023 or whatever the
Mhm.
current thing is. But I don't know why we wouldn't want to be mostly up to date on everything else. It's,
Yeah, and I think that's been part of the,
I mean, you adopt two things, the building code and the IFC, I think.
Mhm.
There's two things that get adopted when you say
Mhm.
generally the fire code.
Mhm.
And one of them works more for existing stuff and one of them covers newer building stuff. In combination, they
Mhm.
represent
Mhm.
the way we look at development or updates.
yeah. I don't think there's, any resistance from staff to moving to a newer building code. I think the only challenge is going to be identifying those items that are, unique to the city that we may want to call out.
Well, Doug will help with that.
For the fire code.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
You and I've talked different times about it. And to your point, Sean, those exceptions that the city baked in when they approved it, which you are able to do, the code allows that. That, in staff's opinion, becomes one of the starting points for you. Those are the easy low-hanging fruit to see where has that changed in this new code. If it doesn't, you want, depending on what the new regulations are for it, if they've changed. You want to keep this, take it out, how do you not? That's the low-hanging fruit. And then the heavier lift stuff. Looking at Doug should be about.
The townships resist, neither Dexter Township or Webster Township has one.
Mhm.
They've never adopted that. They've always resisted it because of there's requirements on like the minimum drive width of certain access points. When you get a fire truck, I think it's like 18 feet. And, they only want 14. Okay, the truck's gonna go there if it has to go there, but the code says a specific thing. That they would, anyway, we don't have some of those things, I was basically covering my ears when they started talking about it. Because they're worried about how close can you have a fire pit, they think somebody's gonna come and regulate where you could put a fire pit. Which is potentially true, but I think to most people in common sense, it's not gonna affect what we do. I mean, if you're dumb enough to put a fire pit on your wood deck, then
You have
stupid
bigger
anyway.
issues.
Yeah, you got bigger issues.
No, but so to your point, why would you go from 2000, have a problem with 2005 to 2023 or whatever the latest is? I mean, from a very libertarian standpoint, you would take the township's position, right? We don't want any code. We're gonna do whatever we want to do. And, if there's deficiencies there, that's on whoever it is puts in those deficiencies and they deal with it. That's their issue. I would think that when the fire code was updated, when it was originally implemented, and updated over time to 2005, that's probably 99% of the improvements that you need. And the difference between that and now, it's like, there are requirements out there that builders look at and people look at and they're like, why do I need to do that? Why are, and take for a great example, food trucks.
Yep.
Why the hell do we have to have the fire department sign off on food trucks to have them in the city? Well, because that's how the liability and the legal and the blah, blah, blah all whittles down. If we just said, screw off, we're not gonna regulate food trucks. If you don't like it, sue us. And the food truck went out there and, I mean, we literally have gone by regulation from having food trucks to not having food trucks.
Look, I'm not,
And so,
You
well,
know,
you
I-
asked the question, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
I'm not into overregulation.
I know.
But some of this comes, from my perspective, when people live in close proximity to other people.
Yeah.
And some of this is needed. When you, in the township, if you live 500 feet away from the next person, you can be as stupid as you want, because chances are that fire isn't gonna affect somebody else.
Yep.
Food trucks, if they're not maintained, are an explosive that hazard. Can be.
In rare
And it does, so I mean, we got into that a couple summers ago because someone wanted to put a food truck in Westridge, right? But all the ones, but the ones that really want to operate have no issue getting an inspection from the fire department.
And to that point,
Hmm?
you follow the rules, and those that don't like to follow the rules are the ones that I'd say, "Oh, this is
Yeah, I think we're a good example if we update the code. I'm not saying we have to be like every year we have to do it, but we're 20 years past where we
I
were.
understand. And I think probably the 2005 code is pretty effective. It does most of what we want it to do. I think every year that they update that code, all I'm saying is those incremental changes have costs to them. And those costs are not necessarily the same benefit as it was when you first adopt a fire code and say, okay, we're gonna go by this standard now. That gives you 90+% of that benefit. Every time it comes out again, it's another incremental amount of things that you say that are trying to improve things, but they can't, right? They're at the margins is where they're looking at. So, but I mean, I'd like to know what the differences are and stuff and what we're looking at, but
Yeah,
and like you said, hopefully it's easy for Doug to say, here's the major highlights of what changed.
yeah. Well, and I believe also in the fire code that there are a number of provisions that say, at the fire chief's discretion.
Mhm.
And a lot of times the fire chief defers to the most recent code, just as a matter of habit, that even though, we've adopted the 2005 code, it'll say, fire chief has the authority to determine this, and then when it's his time to make the determination, he goes to the 2000 whatever most recent
Latest,
code is.
Can I change the topic? We have the goal setting worksheet that's. And every year we don't address the questions that staff ask about what we need to change on that worksheet. We have some that are highlighted in yellow with questions. And I struggle every year during the budget document, because sometimes the budget document, I don't have the answer to these questions. And we have to answer these questions immediately, but it would be nice to have the answer to those questions before the budget document. And I have some questions that didn't get highlighted that I specifically have about the very first one with tax rate competitiveness. Number 2, with being lower than Washington County average, they're definitely we are not. So is that a goal that we want to tweak, remove, change, not include deaths, include operating?
Not include voted villages.
That's the kind of input that I need feedback. And then also on the top one, the tax rate competitiveness, it's becoming more and more difficult to find the data because the counties aren't putting up their portion reports. I mean, I can still muddle through it, but this year's I was using 3-year-old data from Wayne County because they're not putting their stuff online.
Oh, Wayne County.
So
Marie, I think Chris likes this objective.
maybe he does, but there's other ones here though, as I was flipping through, there's some yellow things like, should the committee be reestablished on implementing economic development strategy? Because if that's not something we have an interest in, we should remove it from the goals.
Yeah, I agree.
So whoever, however you want to handle this, Justin, doesn't matter, but I think we need to at least look at these highlighted ones so that we can remove them if we need to.
It looks like there's only 3 or 4 that are highlighted.
Yeah, there's not many.
So-
You got what, 14 minutes?
And can I go through them real quick? Well, so I guess to Marie's first question, do we want to limit it to only non-voted millages?
Sure.
Which item are you on where?
It's not highlighted, it's the very first.
Under tax competitiveness.
It's the second row on page 8.
Or maybe we want to take them all out and just say we want to levy the maximum we can.
Well, I mean, that's a valid question, Sean, with the conversations that have been happening.
Given the environment, the fact that we can make a lot of money on interest, let's do it.
But I
Tough to
just-
follow,
I just have
tough to
a
follow
metric.
that. It's almost like closing the crossing, right?
I would like to keep it and have like, maybe we add that too as a goal. But the second one, sort of the be lower than Washtenaw average, I like the idea of keeping something like that, but
Ain't that
maybe-
just bragging?
Well,
and maybe
that one's
re-
such an
like-
easy one to hit because Ipsy
It's
really,
heavy.
Ipsy skews the heck out of the whole thing.
Mhm.
But nobody really thinks about it that way.
Well, if you want to make it more, then go with the median instead of the mean. But
update it, but or rephrase it, but keep it there because I think it's important as part of that conversation we earlier had of our approach, right? So,
So we just wanna look at all villages or not that villages or.
I like your suggestion, Joe.
I think we should stick to charter laid out what, here's your operating, here's your streets, that's what our millage is. If there's something voted on top of that, I personally don't think that, that's literally something that the community said, hey, we're willing to pay for that in
Yeah.
addition to our tax. So
I like that.
Yep, okay.
All right, I'll let Michelle talk about the economic development strategy and economic preparedness.
So. It says implementing economic developmental strategy, recommend updating goal, meeting economic development preparedness committee to prioritize recommendations. Council eliminated it in 2022. And should it be reestablished or should the scope be removed? Basically, yeah.
What's it do? What's it do?
have we
again?
missed, sorry. I was gonna say, have we missed it since 22?
No, we could probably just take this out.
The DDA is supposed to do, isn't that one of the primary objectives? Economic development strategy outside the DDA.
Yeah, outside the DDA, which includes the industrial park. The economic development preparedness committee was created in the wake of the Great Recession.
Yes.
Before my time, but, and it was a way for the city to take a proactive role in not business recruitment, but business
Retention.
retention, understanding, communicating, developing that relationship is so valuable.
When everybody knows where Jolly Pumpkin is now, that business was it Martin Marietta?
Martin Marietta.
What, I said again, Martin Marietta. Our glorious partners, Ann Arbor Spark, did such a good job of helping that company move to Manchester. This is why I don't particularly care for them. They love that they kept them in Washington County.
Was it?
Okay, and what's funny is you drive-
Spark, or was it the precursor to Spark, which was I
Yeah,
think it was Washington Development Company.
it's the same,
they tell me they went bankrupt,
It's the
same diff-
incorporated under new name.
it's the same muddled mess, but it's the same muddled mess.
But then right at M52 and
Yes, what's funny about it is you drive by that facility and it's still
Bishop.
called the Bishop Circle.
Yeah.
Facility. We lost that business.
Mhm.
Okay, it was right around, and this was before or as I was taking over, I guess, as village president from Jim when he stepped down. I don't remember the exact time frame, but I remember having a bad taste in my mouth about losing the business. There was a big building in the middle of the industrial park. And that's when the shit hit the fan with the economy. That's when Donna Detling and I, or Donnie Rust at the time, first got married, talked a lot about, we gotta make sure we're going to these businesses, understand why it's beneficial to stay here.
Right.
And we need to tell them we appreciate that they're here. Cause, like if like Dexter Fastener, quietest big business you never know about, in the back door, I know, well, they're not really quiet next to it. On Summer Road. But I mean, if they left, we'd be in a world of hurt. You wanna talk about problems?
Absolutely.
Okay, so retention was a huge thing to me at the time. You know, this committee has, that, you know, they don't meet as a committee anymore, but there was a purpose of going around and talking to small and big, you know, businesses.
And you've got staff that now handles that within our perspective. They would just come off. So that's pretty much covered by the next goal here, conduct at least one business forums and partnership.
Yeah,
So really, the other ones probably be.
talk about it.
But to the point of, we have the economic development strategy. Honor in this partner. But we've never really implemented the action items in that. Maybe we need to just look at ourselves, look at the goals, and develop our own implementation strategies. Sounds like a goal to me, Michelle. Move the committee and revisit it to look and see.
I don't even know what you said.
Aye.
Thanks, Randy.
All right, page 9, APT USNC investment policy
I
certification.
want to maintain that goal.
Oh, okay.
You say you do not? Or you do?
I do,
You do.
I thought you wanted to get rid of it.
no,
Change your mind.
that was just, well, I kind of questioned it, but no, I think it's.
You're healthy or hurting?
But it helps.
There you go.
It's just, we don't have to recertify it every year. It's a
Understood.
one and done unless you do a massive change.
Right.
So does it come off then? Because it says the result to date is policy is certified?
Yeah, I know, that's why I asked initially if it should come off, but I think it's supposed to stay on there.
So it's gonna stay on there as policy certification maintaining,
Yeah,
the one that's highlighted, maintain goal.
yeah. I just don't want it to fall off the radar, the fact that it exists, but it's certified.
Page 10, work with DDA to determine long-term parking needs. OHM did a parking analysis for downtown. And really the only thing to come out of that was that we needed one extra ADA space. And I believe that was installed as part of Baker, as part of Baker.
Yeah.
So,
Hopefully accomplished it, take it out of there.
good. Page 12. Wave. So we contribute to Wave, but we aren't really in control of Wave. And so when the goal is, have, Wave 5 days a week.
Why don't you revise the goal? Why don't you propose something that makes sense relative to supporting the wave or
I was saying
public
measure
transportation
a
or?
dollar amount measure,
Yeah, what's our benefit here?
because in that, we're looking for something that's measurable.
Well, but that's the thing, what Ray just said, what's the benefit here? The thing is, I don't think 99% of the people in the city know the services that Wave provides and that you can request. I mean,
Don't we promote that on our website somewhere?
Well, it's promoted in a few places, I believe.
People don't.
what's
read.
that?
I believe it's promoted in a few places.
Well, yeah, but people don't know about it. I mean, I saw an ad on Sun Times the other day for Wave and I thought to myself, oh yeah, that's right. Basically, in the entire western part of the county, you can call them up and they will come to your door and pick you up and take you to wherever it is that you want to go. How many people in the city know that or take advantage of that? I mean, that's a huge benefit that, I mean, if we wanted to push that and say, get some bang for the buck, we should send out flyers to every single address and say in big letters, you can call Wave and they'll pick you up. Like 4 times a year until people start using it. Because I'm sure if you called up Wave, they would tell you how much we use it, and it's not very much.
They do keep statistics on ridership.
Right, and we used to give an
Mhm.
annual report out on what that was. At the very least, it'd be nice to get the statistics that Jim Carson used to bring to us and say, this is what is happening in your community.
Yeah, you can at least see a trend up and down or
Yeah.
seasonal or.
But like I said, I think that's something we should push, because every time I look at it, I'm like, frankly, it's disbelief, because I can't believe that they're offering that service. I've never tried to use it,
Mhm.
but I mean,
Yes.
with the bigger senior population that we have, I mean, it would be great to say at the senior center, hey, put this out. This is something you can do. They'll take you to the grocery store. They'll take you to the doctor appointments.
Mhm.
You know, you can go from here to there. This is how much, I mean, because it costs like $5. I mean, it's a crazy, incredible service that we could be getting so much more value from.
Yeah, so maybe the goal is advertise Wave in X, Y, and Z ways.
Or promote it as a benefit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it is within the county.
They have, I know that they have like a
Call it the door to
transfer,
door.
like you can take away the bus over to Meyer.
Yeah.
And you can pick up Ann Arbor's transportation.
Right.
Meyer.
Mhm.
Are you talking the door to door service?
Yeah, there's a door-to-door service.
Why don't we
There's
start
other stuff.
with a presentation from Wade? So we're all.
Yeah.
They'd be happy to do that.
You know what I mean? And then when you look at the run statistic, we get, you know, and they have an idea how to advertise better.
But yeah, I'm telling you, if you go on their website and you look at the services that are on there, I'm telling you, I literally look at it, and I'm like, that can't be right. I must be missing something. That can't be what they do. And I've never tried to call them and use the service and stuff, but it looks pretty, I mean, pretty amazing, the level of service that there is that we're not used to.
And I think since you brought that up, it's got me thinking about my mother and father-in-law, what they need. And
Yeah.
they're getting at the driving, work.
Is that all of them?
I think those are all the highlighted ones.
All right, so one of the things that I don't know that we've done every year, we've tried to do it every year. Sometimes there was resistance in doing it every year. We want to adopt our goals and objective worksheet. So
Mhm.
could you remind or make that an agenda item when you think it's appropriate, sooner than later? No, we can always come back and add a goal. This is not a limiting document. But I would like to have something in place that we're
Mhm.
that we can advertise. State. It's May, you pick the time, but before we approve the budget, obviously.
How many objectives did we cover today? Page 3.
A lot of them are just ongoing.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for coming today.
No, I want to just check our
Mhm.
progress.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's different ways to do this process, right? And at the last meeting, when we're going, you know, row by row,
Right.
you know, we're getting into some good conversation on different topics. It just takes a very long time to go through row by row. So I think the equally as valid way to do it is just to hit the high level topics that the council really wants to focus on. Because I mean, that gives staff an idea of where council's at and council's priorities without, you know, going through and, you know, have a half-hour conversation on the farmer's market, half-hour conversation on.
When do you suggest our next meeting? then?
Well, would you like to have another one of these?
Well, that's where I'm trying to go. Have we
Well,
covered enough?
well, Ray, what the normal transition, of these two workshops
Right,
is that we'll put together a draft of the general fund, the street, and all the different
Mhm.
funds. And we typically have two meetings to review that together to kind of continue this discussion, but then we have the numbers in front of us.
Mhm.
If you want to keep talking about overall stuff without the framework of a budget in front of us, we could do another one of these in April sometime.
I'm asking you what you're comfortable with. Are you comfortable where we are right now, Mr. Justin?
I think so. I mean, either way, I'm gonna start working on the budget.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start putting numbers to paper. So I mean, I'm always happy to have more of these meetings, more the informal conversational. But
Do you require more, or are you?
I don't think it's required.
Required.
uh,
Do you need more specification?
I don't think so. But it is, we do still have a lot of these types of conversations as we move into the specific budget work sessions, so.
So you said a couple of things today that I want to come back to real quick. The employee handbook.
Mhm.
I'm interested in knowing what the changes are to the benefits
Mhm.
before it looks like we're taking something away if we don't like it.
Mhm.
So rather than you penning something and putting it out there and then having us react funny to it or make it look like we're the bad guy,
Mhm.
I don't want that situation.
Mhm.
Okay, so if there's a summary of what you're doing that you want to, you could share with us, we could each have a chance to ask questions about them before it becomes something that, like I said. Are they in there?
Some of them, yes. Page 2. Top of page 2 of the report.
Okay, I'll read that again and think about. If I have questions. That's the heart of it?
That's not everything, but I think that's some of the meat.
Okay, it's not much beyond this then. Well,
I don't believe so.
Like the last one is the Michigan ESTA law. that we
Yeah,
already-
which we adopted,
we already
correct.
adopted, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but like there have been questions about like, right now, just on that bullet point, right now, every 5 years, there's additional accrual that gets added to employees'
Okay,
schedule. Do we want to change, there have been questions from employees about whether we can change that to have a quicker accrual process for vacation, or maybe they accrue less, but more frequently. It's just a different way of looking at it. If I think everyone starts off with in the accrual schedule, everyone starts off with 12 vacation days and then goes to 15, I think, after 5 years, and then 18 after 10, and
that's the current,
that's the current.
and what's the change?
So, would there be an interest of doing like, additional accrual of like maybe 2 days after 3 years, and, shrinking not even shrinking the accrual schedule, but like making it so they're getting more days more frequently.
I guess I need to understand what the difference.
Yeah.
A versus B.
Yeah.
You're saying when you accrue more frequently, I mean, for example, when I was at Ford/Visteon, you were allocated whatever your 3 weeks for the year.
Mhm.
But you could use them on day one, January
Mhm.
1st, but you accrued them over 10 months. So
Mhm.
over 10 months, you 1/10 each month until the end of October, you're fully
Mhm.
vested.
Mhm.
So if you used 3 weeks of vacation, then you left the company in June, you owed, 40% of what you used back,
Mhm.
right? Because it hadn't been, you could use it, but you didn't
Yeah.
accrue it
Yeah.
until that point.
Yeah.
Where I work with the with the federal government, it's X number of hours per pay period, and that's
Mhm.
every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's like 4 hours every 2 weeks.
That's not where I was going with it. So right now for non-union staff, it's all front loaded as of start date and then anniversary of hire. But like, if everyone is allocated, 12 week or 12 days from, I know, to 12, if it's 12 days, year 0 through 5, You know, could it be 12 days, years 0 through 3, 14 days, you know, 5 to 8 or 4 to, you know, 3 or 4 to 8, or, you know, just.
So rather than waiting for a 5-year chunk, you could break it up. into-
Yeah, I mean, the like, the idea is to hit those goalposts sooner.
Better benefits.
The number doesn't change in the end. at the
Right.
end of 5 years.
It's quicker though.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just quicker,
Well,
it's just a
yeah,
matter of-
mhm.
Yeah, again, back to
Yeah.
board goes 2 weeks when you start out, 2.5 at 3 years,
Mhm.
3 weeks at 5 years, something like
Mhm.
that. As opposed to 2 when you start, 3 when you get
Yeah.
to 5 years, so.
Yeah, because I mean, the idea being that, you know, there's,
Are you adding midpoints? Is that the proposal?
essentially, yeah, like, because we're seeing a lot more turnover, you know, whether you look at local, state, or global, you know, you're seeing more turnover in staff. And so if you add additional
And
boons to stick
I
around.
get it. My point is, can you just get us the examples of what
Yes.
those are?
Yeah.
Ahead of time, so we don't
Yes.
have to, I don't want to have all of this.
Yes,
Just let us think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I get it, I get it.
Yeah.
No problem. Literally change our- Because
Maybe what they was.
the real one, you know, so it becomes-
Well, it's too big an area of our town for us to, just the rest of the citizens to absorb it.
Absolutely.
I agree 100%. It's too big. The money's got to come back to help the citizens.
I agree.
I mean, the businesses also, but there's a lot of residents in that district.
Well, and it's not like we haven't helped the DDA.
Right, we paid Main Street last time, and we didn't ask for a penny.
Well, and then everything we did when we had COVID, and we said,
Absolutely.
I mean, so we work good together. It's
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
time that it needs to shift.
Well, I'm gonna come
No,
back.
I'm just saying, thank
You're welcome, you're welcome.
you, guys. I gotta read my.
On,
Thanks, Dan.
on frequency for goal
You're going,
setting,
Bart?
Yeah.
I would prefer to not do it once a year. I would prefer to do it like quarterly. I don't think it's something, I don't think it's something that should be driven by the budget, because I think during the course of the year, we could have more, these are great discussion, have interact, because, right, we can't all get together at the bar and talk about this kind of stuff. We're not allowed to do that. This gives us an
Yeah.
informal way to talk
We
about
can do this.
whatever it is.
Yeah,
So,
I
I
would
like
like
that.
to second that. I think that's
We
the
can
next
do
one,
it
yeah, do it
throughout.
like 2 times a year.
So back to the DDA and the money towards. I believe that if the DDA had a contract with the city that simply said, we would like to pay for half a police officer, that there is no issue at all.
I'm thinking the number that I laid out for the DDA cited 3 different sections. So that
We can employ or hire anybody we want.
The DDA. can definitely have
So
it.
so I mean, and technically, they could direct contract with the sheriff. Without any issue at all. Now, so I mean, if we're nervous about having a line item, all we have to do is come up with some little agreement that the DDA is hiring. It's no different than, I mean, the DDA could hire to clean up Main Street. You could hire Todd's Landscaping to do it, right? But instead we hire DPW.
I completely get where you're going. We're on the same page.
I like Scott, but I don't want to pay him for any of that, those kind of opinions. The city needs the DDA to contribute. We need to be finding ways that works. And if it has to be put into a contract, like, then make it, but it's totally legal.
I don't disagree.
And it's with it.
By the way, I did the memo.
Your memo is good.
Yeah.
I like your memo.
Because I thought I know that there are communities all over the state that pay the bottom line for staff is, and the way I put it in that memo is, here are things that I think from the act support the ability to do X, Y, and Z as it pertains to police and fire. But the bottom line for me, like I said, is whatever the decisions make it into the plan. Because that's where most communities have gone down. They're doing what you're saying, but they're not putting it in their plan. That,
Yeah.
that's.
But if it's, yeah, the hard part for me there is if it's specifically in the act, you know, it's redundant in the plan. I don't disagree with putting it in the plan.
But that's what the act requires,
Yeah, I understand.
so,
I understand.
and it doesn't have to be. State.
There should be a lot of broadness.
I get that, and the way that the new DDA development plan is, has been drafted is very broad. But it doesn't address this, and I'm just saying, we'll need to, if that decision is made.
It should be in there whether we make the decision or not.
At this point in time, oh, I see the point you're making.
The plan, this
So
board,
because it's like
this
37
board's
yes,
one-year
yes.
mindset shouldn't
Yes.
drive the 20-year plan. The
Correct. I
plan
get
should
what
be
you're
broad enough that
saying.
the board can operate not without limit.
Okay, I get that. Yep.
Because there's gonna be a different group of people maybe in 10 years or wherever they have. So we should give the flexibility there. Well, and you know, the DDA has debt right now.
The DDA has some.
Okay, but not for very much longer. And in the grand scale of the city and the downtown, we're well on our way to paying that debt down in 5 years.
Mhm.
And we could choose to take on more debt for other projects. Or we're gonna be super healthy and flush with cash.
Which will go well by the state, so we'll have to figure
Well,
out where we want to eventually.
Yeah, I mean, we're not anywhere near the limits of having a problem with flush with cash. My point is, the town could benefit if we get these things set up so that it comes back to help pay for some of the things. Structurally, it's there. I mean, the benefit is like 7 mills from Washtenaw County, the ISD, the library. But I mean, if you got to a point where you're eventually you're gonna be at a point. Go ahead. Yeah, everybody can go. I'm done. I didn't mean to go.
You want to do the end of the meeting?
Yeah, is there any non-arranged participation at the end of the meeting? Josh, how are you?
I'm good, you know, just driving and listening.
I know. I just want to say hello. Thanks for joining.
Whoa, yeah, no problem.
Okay,
Thank you, bye.
thank you, everybody, for coming out. Now, everybody.